Chujing stood by the cradle, his gaze deep as an abyss. The next moment, his figure began to blur, slightly swaying, as if a mirage shattered. In an instant, Qi transformed into a gentle breeze, and flesh into mud. His physical body quietly melted away like accumulated snow under the spring sun, transforming into a puddle of spirit mud brimming with majestic yuan qi, while his divine soul and the surrounding yuan qi turned into a wisp of intangible and insubstantial breeze. Finally, the breeze and the spirit mud converged, nurturing a gentle chaotic glow that silently fell into Song Lingqing's forehead, directly aiming at the martial arts seed deep within her divine soul. The moment the glow merged, that Tao seed trembled slightly, and countless intricate and ancient runes appeared out of thin air on its surface, layering and intertwining to ultimately form a flawless, unbreakable seal. This seal not only completely locked away the heavenly fate but also left a soul fragment preset by Chujing. This fragment sealed all of Chujing's memories. When his future self regains this long-sealed heavenly fate, those sealed memories will return to his grasp, like unscrolling a document. At the instant the seal was fully completed, somewhere in the unseen depths, a string connecting to heaven and earth origin silently snapped. In a place tens of thousands of miles away, atop a misty mountain peak, a figure stood with hands clasped behind his back, gazing at the Star River. Xingqiu's body trembled slightly, he could clearly sense that the main body had perished. The ancestral Tao, on this night and moment, had reached the end of its lifespan and vanished into the Tao. In Xingqiu's eyes, there was not a trace of emotion belonging to living creatures, only complete indifference and coldness. Without any hesitation, he turned and took a step forward, his figure disappearing from the Tsungyun realm, entering the vast universe alone. He was a pure incarnation of incense fire willpower, essentially no different from the Yin gods awaiting reincarnation in the vast universe great realm, devoid of yang qi or vitality. His immersion was silent, like a drop of water merging into the sea without stirring any ripples. Xingqiu made his way to the soul origin pool, using the subtle connection with the Tao seed to swiftly traverse this chaotic and enormous ocean. Soon, he locked onto an extremely faint soul light. That soul light was not much different from other residual souls, dim and confused. Indifferently, he raised his hand, the formless willingness materializing into a large hand that reached into the soul origin pool, fishing out the residual soul belonging to Chujing. The residual soul floated in his palm, like a weak flame with no consciousness. Xingqiu lifted his finger to calculate, silently counting the days according to the inherent rhythm of reincarnation. He needed to wait for the most appropriate moment, neither too soon nor too late, to avoid missing the optimal window for reincarnation, which could cause deviation in the rebirth location. Time, little by little, passed as he waited. Over a month later, a flash of indifference glimmered in Xingqiu's eyes. This is the moment. Without further hesitation, he clenched his palm and gently crushed it. The residual soul carrying all of Chujing's essence crumbled completely, like a snuffed-out candle flame, slowly dissipating, transforming into the purest original soul power, returning to reincarnation. When Chujing regained a trace of vague perception, the first thing he felt was an extreme emptiness. No body, no weight, no warmth or coldness, he was merely a wisp of pure consciousness floating in an endless, oppressive yellow world. He looked around. In the sky, there was no sun, no stars, no clouds, only the omnipresent yellow halo covering everything. And above this yellow heavenly dome, an even more peculiar scene appeared before him, countless raging rivers. These rivers had a semi-transparent, illusory quality, crisscrossing in all directions, like the root system of a giant tree, flourishing and silently flowing high up in the void. No one knew where their source began, nor where they would end, only that they flowed ceaselessly, exuding the desolation and ancient qi from the universe's origin. He quietly hung in this yellow void, his thoughts turning slowly like rusty gears. This place was neither the great universe nor the vast universe great realm. It could only be the true yellow springs from legend, never manifesting in eternity, visible only when a residual soul is reborn. Understanding arose, bringing an unusual calm. He had long expected this scene. He slowly drifted forward. Here, time lost its meaning, as if only a moment had passed, or perhaps an eternity, with the surrounding scenery unchanged, only that yellow sky and the silently flowing rivers above. He did not know how long passed, but amidst this seemingly endless yellow, a different scene finally appeared before Chu Jing's eyes. It was a road, an ancient road radiating a hazy glow. It extended from the void, exuding a gentle luster. The ancient road was not wide, yet it seemed to span the entire yellow world, reaching to the horizon's end, disappearing into the more profound unknown. The road was crowded with countless indistinct figures. Those were various residual souls, slowly moving their steps along this soul path, heading toward the unknowable beyond. Insight arose in Chu Jing's heart, realizing this place was the true reincarnation road, the path to rebirth, the beginning of transcendence. Chu Jing's attention was not entirely drawn to this reincarnation road. His gaze went beyond the oblivious souls moving along the path, looking at the side of the reincarnation road. There, at the edge of the ancient road, under the dim background, stood a figure. It was a little Taoist. He wore a pristine moon-white Taoist robe, of ordinary material, with an upright posture. His eyes were as deep as if they contained the birth and death of the universe, carrying an ageless solemnity that belied his youthful appearance. He was not walking on the reincarnation road but stood quietly by its side, like an observer, calmly scanning every passing soul on the road. Not far from the little Taoist, there stood a strange giant stone. The stone was about 3 zhang high, its entire body appearing a dim grayish blue, with a surface smooth as a mirror, clearly reflecting the scenes on the reincarnation road. Reflected in the mirror was not the dim world and soul shadows of this place, but countless complex lights and shadows rapidly flowing and vanishing. Within those lights and shadows was an ocean of information, countless fragmented, fleeting scenes, joys and sorrows, love and hate, life and death. Seemingly compressing the entire life of countless living creatures, even the many possibilities of their destinies, into this stone mirror. Chu Jing's gaze suddenly became sharp, intensely scrutinizing the little Taoist. This was the good corpse incarnation of the Master of Heavenly Fortune, appearing here by coincidence? Or had he long calculated that he would pass by reincarnation road at this moment? The little Taoist maintained a calm expression, his gaze penetrating through the confused crowd of souls, accurately falling on Chu Jing. His eyes were indifferent, without any display of emotion, neither kind nor malicious. He did not speak, having no intention of communicating. Chu Jing also did not speak much. He did not want to interfere with the process of reincarnation. His objective was very clear: to enter reincarnation, return to Songyun realm, with no moment of delay. He disregarded the little Taoist and the 3 live stone, concentrating his consciousness, complying with the invisible force guiding him, along the glowing reincarnation road, slowly advancing forward. The reincarnation road seemed endless, journeying forward, who knows how long it had been. Only at the end of the road did a slowly rotating vortex appear. The vortex presented a chaotic color, inside seemingly containing the mysteries of the universe's birth and death, emitting a powerful traction force, precisely the entrance to reincarnation. Here it was. Without any hesitation, Chu Jing threw himself into that chaotic vortex. Boom, within a breath, the world flipped, the universe collapsed. At the moment of entering the vortex, the powerful obliterating force originating from reincarnation's essence, like a grinding slab of immense weight, fiercely pressed upon Chu Jing's consciousness. In this life, starting from being born in Songyun realm, all memories, emotions, experiences, everything swiftly shattered, ground into dust, then swept away by the power of reincarnation, instantly dissipating. This is the inevitable process of reincarnation, washing away the marks of the past life. Only then can one purely be reborn. However, during this massive obliteration of memory, a unique anomaly occurred. As a cultural relic restorer, Chu Jing's memories of his past life remained preserved. These memories, belonging to the last era, although also experiencing violent turbulence in the vortex, stood firm like a rock. Regardless of how the reincarnation law washed over them, they remained intact, deeply imprinted in the depths of his consciousness. The laws of reincarnation in this era could not interfere with the traces left by the previous epoch. Songyun realm. A fluctuation occurred in the mysterious heavenly fate, rippling with a slight ripple. This ripple was utterly undetectable for ordinary cultivators. But for some powerful cultivators, and even this piece of heaven and earth, it was akin to lightning in the dark night. The heavenly Tao quickly sensed it. Sitting quietly at the heart of the great realm, comprehending the laws, attempting a further breakthrough, Zhao Tingxian was suddenly awakened. He swiftly opened his eyes, immortal light shooting out, penetrating the endless void in an instant, looking toward the direction of the heavenly fate fluctuation. Heavenly fate anomaly. Zhao Tingxian's expression was solemn, daring not to be the slightest bit negligent. His hands formed seals, frantically deducing Tianji, locating the newly appeared source of the heavenly fate change. Soon, as the one holding Sanyun's heaven's mandate, he locked onto the target with his sensitivity to heavenly fate. In the southern region, in a remote mortal village, a newly born baby boy. The boy's soul light flickered slightly, clearly showing a speck of brilliance from his past wisdom remained. Zhao Tingxian seemed to recall something, his expression paused. The birth date and 8 characters matched perfectly. So it's you. As Zhao Tingxian's eyes flashed with immortal light, he pointed across the void. A heavenly Tao law containing the power of sealing, traversed the void, instantly descending upon the newly born baby boy. To ensure absolute certainty, Zhao Tingxian's actions were a bit heavy-handed. This forceful point not only flawlessly sealed his fetal spiritual wisdom but also locked down the boy's own 1 soul and 2 spirits. Among the 5 great holy lands of the southern region, there were also deeply cultivated great powers skilled in divination and deduction, who, during their meditation or night sky observation, discovered some abnormalities. The slight ripple in heavenly fate was already a significant matter for these beings standing at the pinnacle of this world, enough to provoke various speculations and vigilance. For a time, incense was burned and prayers were offered, petitions were made to the heavens, some activated ancient formations, deducing fortune and misfortune, some sent disciples to investigate discreetly. But these newly risen waves were quickly pressed down by Zhao Tingxian with a casual wave. The news about this heavenly fate fluctuation was controlled to a very small scope, failing to incite a large commotion. In that remote village, the infant boy with 1 soul and 2 spirits sealed by a gesture from Zhao Tingxian, was naturally the reincarnation of Chu Jing. Due to his innate incomplete soul, he appeared particularly different from the other children in the village. His reactions were always half a beat slow, his gaze often vacant and dull, and his speech extremely unclear. Even when he reached the age to speak, he could only utter a few indistinct syllables. Xingqiu, walking silently through the world, soon found this boy, who seemed somewhat foolish to others, by following the subtle connection with the Tao seed. He did not interfere, merely observed from the shadows, silently watching the destiny trajectory of Chu Jing's reincarnated life. When Chu Jing was 7, an extraordinary famine swept through this region, leaving the land barren for miles and no harvest to gather. Hunger spread like a plague, rapidly extending its reach. The parents, seeing their yellow-faced, emaciated children crying for food, were filled with despair. Ultimately, to exchange for some meager grains to survive, they sold the children one after another. Because of his foolishness, Chu Jing was the first to be considered for sale. He was taken to the human market, squeezed in with other enslaved children, his gaze vacant and unknowing of his impending fate. Buyers looked him over with critical eyes, most shaking their heads and moving on when they saw the foolish and dazed look on his face. Just as Chu Jing was about to become stewed meat in the pot, Xingqiu intervened. He bought Chu Jing without saying much, held his skinny little hand, and turned away. In the end, that family failed to survive the year of famine and died of starvation one after another. Xingqiu held Chu Jing's hand and traveled south, crossing desolate fields, parched riverbeds, and numerous villages ravaged by famine. Chu Jing followed in a daze, still speech unclear, speaking rarely, mostly staring blankly ahead or at the sky. He did not know where this silent old man was taking him, nor what future awaited him. He had long grown accustomed to acceptance, whether it was the disdain of his parents, the ridicule of village children, or being sold, he was used to it all. In the depths of winter, the cold wind was like a bone-scraping steel knife, howling across the land. As the year-end neared, a touch of human warmth filled the air, with every household preparing for the new year. Despite the continued cold, there was a hint of hope for the new year's arrival. Xingqiu, holding Chu Zheng's hand, finally reached the destination of their journey after a long trek. Great Zhou Dynasty, Wuyang County, Luofeng City. The silhouette of the city loomed indistinctly in the wind and snow, its mottled walls telling tales of the passage of time. The city gate bustled with activity, the clamor of carriages and horses, a sight much more flourishing than the desolation seen along the way. Xingqiu did not pause, holding Chu Zheng's hand, heading straight to the most magnificent residence in the city. The Vermilion Gate was tightly closed, with two stone lions standing imposingly at the door, covered in a thin layer of snow. On the lintel, the two gold-foiled characters' Song residence still looked impressive against the gray sky. Xingqiu stepped forward slowly, raising a withered hand to grip the cold copper ring, knocking lightly thrice. Creak, a side door opened slightly, and an escort master wearing a thick cotton jacket and a short sword at his waist peeked out, examining the old man and boy outside. The old man was bent, thinly clad, with a face weathered by exposure, looking like an old beggar who might collapse by the roadside at any moment. The boy was even thinner, skin on bones, his ill-fitting, tattered cotton clothes full of patches, his small face blue with cold, eyes vacant, lips cracked. The escort master furrowed his brow, glancing at the child the old man held and then at their downtrodden appearance, quickly understanding the situation. This kind of refugee child had become a common sight recently. "Come in." The escort master's tone was not warm, but not harsh either, stepping aside to let them through. "Consider yourselves lucky, the residence is looking to add people." With the year-end approaching, the residence indeed needed more junior servants for odd jobs. "Thank you." Xingqiu cupped his hands, his voice hoarse, pulling Chu Zheng over the not-too-high threshold into the Song residence. Soon, they followed the escort master into a spacious courtyard, the cobblestone ground meticulously cleared of snow. Already standing in the courtyard were over a dozen children of similar age to Chu Zheng, boys and girls, most with eyes full of timid curiosity or blankness. Several managers and escort masters in Song residence's uniform stood aside, talking in low voices. Xingqiu led Chu Zheng silently to stand at the back of the group of children. A middle-aged escort master, looking like a manager holding a roster and brush, approached. He glanced at Xingqiu and Chu Zheng, casually asking, "Name and age?" Xingqiu raised a hand, pointing to Chu Zheng beside him, speaking, "Chu Zheng, 7. Chu Zheng, who had been standing silently, shivered almost imperceptibly, a faint trace of confusion flashing in his vacant eyes upon hearing this name. Chu Zheng? That was not his name. The villagers called him Fool, his parents called him Tai Dan. He did not understand why this old man had given him a new name but was long used to not questioning it, simply lowering his head and accepting his new identity, staring at his worn cotton shoes, toes peeking out. Chu Zheng. The manager nodded, without further questioning, tearing off a sheet from the roster and handing it over, his tone indifferent. "Here are 12 taels, just sign and put your fingerprint." It was a contract of sale. Xingqiu took the brush, slowly writing the two ancient, powerful characters Xingqiu. After finishing writing, he put down the pen, accepted the silver handed over by the manager, did not glance at Chu Zheng again, and turned to leave through the side door he came from. In the sky, at some unknown time, tiny snowflakes began to drift again, dense and pervasive, carrying a bone-chilling cold. Instinctively, Chu Zheng raised his head, watching the gradually departing hunched figure disappear into the wind and snow outside the door. Inside his heart, there was an inexplicable emptiness. This old man, who had taken him very far, who had bought him from the human market, left just like that. Once again, he became alone. He quietly withdrew his gaze, lowered his head again, and shrank himself into the tattered cotton clothes, resisting the cold, isolating everything unfamiliar around him. Chu Zheng settled down in the side courtyard of the Song residence. He was assigned to live with other newly bought little servants, a large communal bed, simple conditions, but at least there was a place to shield from the wind and snow, there was new cotton clothing, and daily 2 full meals to fill his stomach. Compared to the previously disastrous days, it was paradise. Because of unclear speech and slow reactions, it was difficult for him to communicate normally with other children. When other children had begun to familiarize themselves with the environment, even grouping up in clusters, he was still alone, often squatting in a corner, dazedly staring at the sky, or unintentionally scratching the ground with a twig. In the blink of an eye, several days passed. On this day, there was suddenly a commotion in the side courtyard. A tall, imposing middle-aged man, dressed in a brocade robe, brought two exquisitely carved, richly dressed little girls into the courtyard, surrounded by a group of escort masters and serving maids. The originally scattered servants in the courtyard were immediately gathered together by the managers, standing in several rows, each holding their breath, not daring to breathe heavily. They all knew that this was the master of the residence and the two young ladies, coming to select close servants. Being chosen meant a better road ahead, a chance to change their fate. Chu Jing, naturally skinny and small, was inconspicuous among the crowd, quickly pushed to the back, almost completely obscured by those in front, difficult to notice. Song Lingxue swept her gaze over these nervous yet hopeful children, her eyes clear. Almost at first glance, her eyes passed over those children standing upright in the front, landing on the small, out-of-place figure at the back of the crowd, with head lowered and shoulders hunched. No one knew why, but at the moment she saw this child, Song Lingxue's heart inexplicably throbbed. It was an extremely subtle feeling, as if some invisible thread had gently tugged at her heartstrings. Song Lingqing, held in Song Tonghai's arms, poked her little head out, looked at Song Lingxue, and asked curiously, "Sister, which one do you want?" Song Lingxue hesitated slightly, then raised her hand to point at Chu Jing in the corner. Following her sister's direction, Song Lingqing looked over. She also saw Chu Jing. Song Lingqing blinked her big shiny eyes, tugged at her father's clothes, as if acting like a spoiled child, and pointed at Chu Jing again. "Dad, I want this one, I want him to play with me." Hearing this, Song Tonghai was slightly taken aback, glanced at the small, seemingly foolish boy, then instinctively looked at his eldest daughter beside him, with a slight look of concern on his face. He hesitated for a moment, his expression gentle, leaning down to say, "Schwer, you see, let's let your sister have her way, okay? She's still young, Dad will find someone more sensible and clever for you, who can better assist you in the future." Song Lingxue looked up at her father, then at her sister, who was smiling at her in her father's arms, with a flash of complexity deep in her eyes. There was disappointment, a faint touch of unnoticeable grievance, but more than that, there was early wisdom and restraint. She lightly bit her lip, and the hand she was about to raise was slowly lowered. She did not speak again, only nodded slightly. Seeing this, Song Tonghai sighed with relief, though with some guilt. He quickly shifted his gaze to the crowd, searched briefly, and pointed at a boy in the front row, plain-looking, seeming quite honest and sincere, and beckoned, "Song Yun, come over here, from now on, you'll follow the young lady." The boy named Song Yun was initially startled, hurriedly stepped forward, knelt, and kowtowed, "Thank you, master." "Thank you, Miss Ya." The crowd stirred slightly, envious gazes directed at Song Yun. Song Lingxue did not look at the chosen Song Yun, nor did she look again at Chu Jing standing in the back, just silently turned around and, accompanied by the maids, left the side courtyard first. As the crowd gradually dispersed, the managers began assigning the new servants specific tasks. Chu Jing stood in the same place, a bit confused, not really understanding what had just happened. After everyone had left, Song Lingxue stealthily returned and sought out the escort master responsible for registering names earlier. "Earlier, that child chosen by the second young lady, let me see his indenture," Song Lingxue said calmly, emotion undetectable. The escort master did not dare delay, promptly produced the indenture, and respectfully handed it over. Song Lingxue took the paper, her gaze landing directly on the signature at the bottom. Zhengchu. The two ancient calligraphic characters came into her view. The handwriting was strong and forceful, unlike what an ordinary person would write. Her slender fingers gently brushed over the two characters, her eyes flickering slightly, lost in thought. "The person who sent him?" she asked, looking up. Replying to Miss, the person already left. It was an old man. He looked very aged and quite pitiful. I saw he wasn't having an easy time, so I gave him 2 extra ounces according to our rules, the escort master answered honestly. Song Lingxuan nodded slightly and didn't ask any further. She carefully folded the indenture and placed it into her sleeve. Then she turned around and left the secluded courtyard with steady steps. The wind and snow gradually subsided, the dawn broke, yet the warmth was barely felt. After sending Chu Jing to the Song residence and completing the final resettlement task, Jingchu didn't linger for a moment. With a single step, he had already left the Songyun realm. His figure flickered in the boundless void, and a faint ripple of time and space began to spread around him. With his current level of cultivation, it was far from enough to sustain him traversing the river of space-time, but staying near the river for a short time was still within his capabilities. Soon, the river of space-time, carrying fragments of time, appeared before him. The river of space-time, running through eternity, connected all possibilities and impossibilities. Zheng Chu found a relatively stable node of time and space near the river, sat down slowly cross-legged like an old monk meditating, and gradually merged his breath with the surrounding fluctuations of time and space, becoming indistinct. Then, he took out Fu Pinglan's eyes. His expression was calm. He gently rubbed the eyeballs as if playing with iron balls, quietly waiting. Now, he only needed to wait for a person who was bound to appear. In an instant, the previously calm-flowing river of spacetime suddenly surged with violent waves. A white figure, like a fish swimming against the current, cutting through the waves, burst from the depths of the river and landed heavily near the shore, staggering and almost unable to stand firm. It was Fu Pinglan. He still looked like a young man, radiantly in white, but now appeared extremely disheveled, his breath chaotic, surrounded by jumbled spacetime fragments. Where his eyes should have been, there were only 2 hollows, constantly emitting thin spacetime cracks, appearing eerie and terrifying. The moment Fu Pinglan appeared and steadied himself. The eyes that Jing Chu held in his palm sensed the main body's proximity and suddenly shone with intense light. Those tightly closed eyes seemed to come alive in an instant, trembling violently. Fu Pinglan's body stiffened, and those hollow eye sockets instantly looked in the direction where Jing Chu was. Even without eyes, his sensory perception was extremely sharp. My eyes. His heart trembled fiercely, and without any hesitation, he raised his hand and grabbed across the void towards Jing Chu. A giant hand tore through the void, carrying a majestic force that seemed to crush Jing Chu with one grasp. Facing this furious strike, Jing Chu showed no intention of resisting, releasing his hand and letting the giant hand easily reclaim the eyes. Fu Pinglan was slightly stunned and instinctively retracted his hand. The next moment, as the eyes returned to their place, large segments of forgotten secrets surged into his mind. These memories were about the ancient times and about Jing Chu. In just a moment, he learned many previously concealed truths. He suddenly looked up, his eyes abruptly opened wide, emitting a dazzling scarlet divine light, fixating on the aged figure not far away. He quickly realized that this was merely an incarnation constructed by Incense fire willpower. For a moment, Fu Pinglan's expression became extremely serious, his brows furrowed tightly. He couldn't understand what Jing Chu's purpose was in behaving like this, going to great lengths to seize his eyes only to return them so easily now. This was completely illogical. What is your intention? Fu Pinglan's voice was hoarse, his eyes filled with intense vigilance and confusion. Jing Chu's expression was indifferent, calmly watching Fu Pinglan, speaking slowly, your death is imminent, so I return your eyes to leave you with an intact corpse. He merely stated the facts. As soon as he finished speaking, Jing Chu's figure became unstable, flickering like a candle in the wind. Gradually dissipating, turning into wisps of pure willpower smoke, and finally disappearing completely. Only leaving Fu Pinglan alone, standing in place, his expression shifting unpredictably. Death is imminent, leaving me an intact corpse. He gazed at the place where Jing Chu disappeared. In those newly returned, yet to fully adapt eyes, there appeared an unprecedented shadow and a fierce cold light. From beginning to end, Jingchu never regarded him as significant, treating him as a pawn to be manipulated at will. Jingchu, you have insulted me too much. Buzz, in the moment of the Taoist ancestors passing, a silent hum originating from the cosmic origin resonated through time immemorial, echoing thunderously above the river of spacetime. At the pinnacle of the river of spacetime, a vast torrent formed by endless fragments of time, a figure shuddered violently. This figure, enveloped in a hazy chaotic chi flow, seemed to merge with time and space itself, standing quietly, cloaked in the dust of time for an unknown span. Chu Jing slowly opened his eyes. As he first opened his eyelids, countless great realms seemed to birth and perish in the depths of his eyes. A moment later, all the anomalies vanished, leaving only the ultimate chaos divine light, like a mirror reflecting the rise and fall of the ages. Instinctively, Chu Jing took a deep breath. The chaotic torrent containing boundless information of time and space surged into his mind, bringing intense pain, as if millions of poisoned steel needles pierced simultaneously. This pain originated not from the body but from the soul's core, a storm of memories. Countless memory fragments, like a world-ending flood unleashed by a dam collapse, furiously impacted every corner of his sea of consciousness. Among these memories, he saw ancient times, saw that vast, boundless primeval great universe, where myriad Tao compete, saw the heaven burial palace that suppressed the heavenly power fragment. Memories froze on the moment he, in the heaven burial palace, faced countless near-death experiences and finally touched that heavenly power fragment. The ecstasy and solemnity of that moment seemed like yesterday. Then, the picture swiftly took a downturn. The fierce Tao struggle that swept through the entire ancient era erupted because of the heavenly power fragment. To balance yin and yang, to quell the Tao struggle, he had to take a desperate gamble, slaying ancestors and seizing fate, trying to forcibly establish order with absolute power. However, he underestimated the madness of those ancient ancestors and the good and evil corpses behind them, and overestimated his state after continuous battles. In the end, surrounded by enemies, like a reversing star river, the universe collapsed, closing in on him from all sides. He fought bloodily, shattering countless times and spaces, yet ultimately outnumbered, his power exhausted, and his Tao crumbled. Ultimately, in that extreme and tragic Tao war, he was hunted down and fell, his consciousness sinking into eternal darkness. And Xue Qing. To lend him a hand, she resolutely stepped into the future, seeking help, but ultimately, she too fell, her existence all but erased by the epic's mighty power. Xue Qing. Song Ling Xue. Chu Jing murmured unconsciously, his head splitting with pain. He had not anticipated that through his reincarnation, during his rise in this life, he would entangle in such a complex karmic link with Xue Qing's reincarnated self, the woman named Song Ling Xue. Was all this coincidence, or an arrangement predestined by an unseen force? Thinking of this, Chu Jing frowned slightly, deep in thought. In this life, who is paving the way for me in secret? He clearly remembered that throughout his reincarnation process, including his birth in the Tsungyun realm and subsequently being sent to the Song residence, there were signs of a meticulous arrangement. Was it the master of heavenly fortune? Or, someone else? The chaotic thoughts and the surging tide of memories collided, causing Chu Jing's freshly awakened consciousness to toss like a leaf in a storm, wildly unstable. He slowly closed his eyes, guiding the chaotic primordial qi that began to boil within him, to calm his mind's memories. After a long time, the intense pain in his mind gradually subsided, the surging memory fragments returned to their places, the memories belonging to Taoist ancestor Xing Chu gradually stood out, while Chu Jing's memories became increasingly blurred. When Chu Jing opened his eyes again, they were as calm as an ancient well, yet beneath that calmness, a chill lay hidden. His gaze deepened, no longer hesitating, he moved his mind. Buzz. An obscure light gate silently appeared before him. Beyond the light gate did not lie an ordinary space, but a cave heaven world independent of the river of spacetime, constructed and nurtured by his own Taoist law. Chu Jing stepped through, his figure merging into the light gate, vanishing from the river of spacetime's pinnacle. Within the cave heaven world, Soft radiance from the sun illuminated everything, the sky pure, occasionally with Tao talismans streaking by like meteors. Below was a cloud sea gathered from spiritual energy, soft and thick. In the distance, the vague outlines of mountains and rivers could be seen, embryonic forms slowly evolving through world rules, the entire world filled with peace, pregnant with endless vitality. Chu Jing appeared in the center of the cloud sea, lifting his hand. Within his palm, chaotic primordial chi gathered, and a jade box, about a foot long and half a foot wide, emerged from thin air. The jade box, entirely displaying a gentle glazed luster, was crafted from the finest immortal jade, engraved with talismanic patterns containing the mysteries of time and space, with threads of temporal fluctuations emitting from it, making the surrounding scene slightly blurred and distorted. Luguan Jade Box. Within this jade box lies an independent great realm, its most mystical feature being the ability to adjust the speed of time within and outside at will. Even if epochs pass in the external world, time within may be but the flick of a finger. Chu Zhang's gaze fell upon the jade box, a trace of exceedingly complex flicker, containing guilt and a subtle, almost imperceptible, tenderness passed uncontrollably deep within his tranquil, abyss-like eyes. But more than anything, there was a heaviness. Inside the jade box, sealed within, was the body of Song Lingxue. Back then, to save him, she did not hesitate to burn her life origin, forcibly pushing herself beyond her limits, ultimately suffering irreparable injuries to her Tao foundation, her life force nearly completely extinguished. If he had not sealed her into this Luguan jade box in time, freezing her final thread of life and time, she would have long since perished, her soul returning to reincarnation. Now, he already held 30% of the heavenly fate. If he could add the portion carried by Song Lingxue, then his total control over the heavenly fate would reach 55%. 55%, this was a crucial point, signifying a predetermined outcome. Only by holding more than 50% of the heavenly fate could he forcibly compel the immortal Tao heavenly fate true spirit, hidden deep within the immortal Tao origin, to manifest, slaying it and thereby determining the cosmic order and reclaiming the complete heaven's mandate. If the heavenly fate was less than 50%, he would not be able to lock onto the true spirit of heavenly fate. At that time, there would only be one way to achieve his goal. To slay all immortal path cultivators, using endless slaughter and causality to forcibly shake the foundation of the immortal path, forcing out the true spirit of heavenly fate. Such a path would have unimaginable ramifications, with the number of dead living creatures numbering in the billion trillions, creating a karmic burden too heavy to bear. It was an absolute path of no return that Chu Jing was unwilling to tread. After contemplating for a moment and weighing all the pros and cons in his mind, the last trace of hesitation in Chu Jing's eyes completely disappeared. He slowly raised his hand, gentle chaotic primordial chi flowing from his fingertips, lightly touching the time and space Tao patterns on the surface of the Luguan jade box. Click. The lid of the jade box slowly slid open. In an instant, a gentle immortal light burst forth from within the box, illuminating Chu Zhang's face and dispersing the slight chaos mist surrounding him. Within the immortal light, a figure slowly emerged, suspended above the jade box. It was Song Lingxue. Her face had lost all color, transparent like crystal, a sheet of pallor. Underneath her skin were countless fine cracks like a spider's web. These cracks were the external manifestation of her collapsed Tao foundation and life origin depleted to the extreme, like a piece of glazed porcelain about to shatter completely. Her eyes were tightly shut, long and dense lashes weakly covering her eyelids like butterfly wings, without the slightest twitch, her lips dry, devoid of moisture and luster, her aura around her weakened to the extreme, like a candle in the wind, ready to be extinguished at any moment. The gentle immortal light illuminated Song Lingxue's pale visage. Time, in this cave heaven world, seemed to become slow and heavy. In the next moment, Song Lingxue's eyelids fluttered slightly, her tightly closed eyes slowly opening into a thin slit. When she first opened her eyes, her pupils were unfocused, as if still immersed in endless darkness. Her gaze swept across the surroundings, and the moment she saw Chu Jing, a hint of urgency flashed in her originally unfocused eyes, almost reflexively. Her lips moved slightly, eager to ask something, her memory still lingering on the moment they escaped into the universe. However, before her weak voice could sound, the first words Chuzheng spoke froze all the emotions that had just arisen within her, leaving her utterly stunned, as though struck by lightning. My memories have fully recovered. Thank you, Daoist Xueqing, for your assistance all the way. Chuzheng's voice was calm, low, carrying the aloofness and gravity of someone long in power, overlooking all beings. His expression at this moment was grave, devoid of any past warmth, only calmness. His voice faltered, his gaze falling upon Song Lingshua's cracked and shocking face, continuing to speak with regret and helplessness. Now that the heavenly fate is scattered, your Tao foundation collapsed, your life origin exhausted, already a spent force with no oil left in the lamp, it is not that I am unwilling to save you, but truly, incapable of reversing fate. I hope Daoist will not blame me. At this moment, Chuzheng was quickly weighing things internally. Judging from Song Lingshua's earlier state, it was evident that the part of memory belonging to Xueqing had likely revived as well. Since that was the case, speaking of it as husband and wife was rather untimely, and addressing her as Daoist was undoubtedly more appropriate at this moment. He knew clearly in his heart the condition of Song Lingxue, or rather Xueqing. Her Tao foundation utterly collapsed, life origin burned to emptiness, her divine soul filled with cracks. Such injuries, unless he could immediately grasp the complete reincarnation authority, forcibly intervening in the reincarnation law, to reshape her soul body and restore her Tao foundation, were truly beyond reversal. He could not save her. At least, until he acquired the full heavenly fate and re-established Yin Yang reincarnation, he could not. So, before him, there remained only one choice left, to take out the heavenly fate within her while she still had a last breath. Otherwise, once her life force completely extinguished, and she died with her Tao fading, the Tao seed containing immense heavenly fate would fall into reincarnation along with her residual soul. By then, extracting it would be as hard as ascending to the heavens. He would need to spend endless ages deducing, looking for it, during which countless obstacles and variables would arise. He could not afford to wait, nor could this universe. For the greater good, he had to make a choice. Xueqing. Daoist? Song Lingxue stared blankly at Chuzheng. Hearing this slightly distant address, her eyes rapidly reddened, a layer of mist uncontrollably spreading, blurring her vision. She bit her lower lip fiercely, taking a deep breath, this simple motion pulling on the severe Tao injuries within her, causing her to involuntarily let out a series of low coughs. For a long time, she barely managed to calm her breathing, slowly raised her head, and met Chuzheng's calm, unruffled eyes. On her face, she forced a smile that was almost bleak. She nodded slightly, her voice carrying an unusual calmness, as if she had long accepted this final outcome. If that's the case, fellow Daoist, go ahead and take your fate. Her gaze seemed to penetrate Chuzheng's body, looking into the void distance, gazing at the already gone ancient times, her tone ethereal, carrying a trace of reminiscence. Back then, in the ancient times, when I decided to help you, I had already foreseen that there might be today's outcome. Being able to help you, fellow Daoist, reach this step, I have no regrets. Upon hearing these words, a barely noticeable ripple appeared in the lake of Chuzheng's heart, but it was instantly suppressed by reason and the memory, just revived, belonging to Daoist ancestor Xingqiu. Those memories told him that to quell the Tao struggle and reopen Yin Yang, sacrifice was inevitable. Xueqing being so understanding and comprehending his difficulties was the best scenario. Facing the increasingly weak aura and the gradually dissipating brilliance in Song Lingshua's eyes, Chuzheng solemnly bowed and saluted. Fellow Daoist, you go first. Chuzheng's voice remained steady, betraying not the slightest ripple. Once I reshape the heavenly order, open Yin Yang, and set the cycle of rebirth, I will surely prepare a broad and bright path for you, aiding you to ascend to the pinnacle in your next life. After saying this, he said no more, stood up, raised his hand, and pointed like a sword. At his fingertips, pure and terrifying chaotic primordial chi swirled, containing 30% of heavenly fortune power, without any hesitation, directly pointing towards the space between Song Lingshua's eyebrows, aiming at the faintly visible Tao seed. Buzz, in this critical moment, a gentle light screen suddenly appeared from the space between Song Lingshua's eyebrows. On the light screen, countless golden symbols flowed and intertwined like living beings, forming an incredibly sturdy barrier, forcibly obstructing Chu Zhang's fingertips outside. A powerful recoil force came, causing Chu Zhang's finger to pause slightly. A flash of astonishment instantly passed through Chu Zhang's eyes. This seal. The Law Qi mechanism contained within this light screen was all too familiar to him. It was the Qi refining technique. It was the path of the Daluo Golden Immortal pointing directly to the source, and its purity, along with the perfection and strength of its construction laws, was far beyond what ordinary Daluo Golden Immortals could achieve. This powerful seal suppressing the Dao seed of heavenly fortune was clearly left by a Daluo Golden Immortal with unfathomable cultivation. Who could it be? In this entire great universe, when did such a powerful seal-leading Daluo Golden Immortal emerge? Is this person an enemy or a friend? Countless questions flashed through Chu Zhang's mind like lightning. Song Lingshua let out an extremely painful low moan, as the forcibly manifested seal seemed to further accelerate the loss of her vitality. Her breathing became increasingly rapid and weak, her chest heaving violently, yet drawing in little breath. The brilliance in her eyes faded rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye, gradually dispersing, as if it might extinguish completely the next second. The icy cracks spreading all over her body grew deeper in color, ready to completely burst open at any moment. There was not much time left. At this moment, it was not the time for Chu Zhang to delve into the origin of this seal and the secrets behind it. His brow furrowed slightly, a flash of sternness flickered in his eyes. Open! A low shout, like the thunder of chaos, exploded in this cave heaven world. The originally smoothly flowing chaotic primordial qi around him instantly boiled, and the 30% heavenly fortune power within him merged with his own yuan qi, transforming into a chaos finger gang. The finger gang, like lightning, struck heavily on the golden sealed light screen. Crack, a crisp and heart-wrenching breaking sound suddenly rang out. The sealing light screen originating from the Daluo Golden Immortal, under the impact of the chaotic primordial qi fused with 30% heavenly fortune, only sustained for less than the time of one breath before it shattered like a collapsing dried tree, disintegrating into countless golden light dots, disappearing scatteredly. The moment the seal shattered, the aura of heavenly fortune overflowed from the Dao seed, instantly entering Chu Zhang's perception. Just as Chu Zhang's fingertip was about to touch the Dao seed, ready to absorb the heavenly fortune within, another change erupted. The Dao seed trembled violently, a torrent of memories exploded. Countless sharper memory fragments fiercely surged into Chu Zhang's mind. These memories were also related to the ancient times. But, they were completely different from those previously awakened atop the river of space-time, like a different life. He and Xue Qing once held a grand wedding. At the outset of the Dao struggle, amidst the storm and peril, she stood by his side resolutely. It was she who burned all of herself, finding aid from the future to win that battle in the ancient times. With the guidance of the Master of Heavenly Fortune, he laid out plans for ages, thus resulting in the current life. A massive mix of memories clashed fiercely in Chu Zhang's mind. Two sets of memories, two perceptions, two completely different emotions were engaged in a brutal battle in his mind, almost tearing his consciousness apart completely. This intense conflict of memories and the soul-level pain seemed to be an excruciating epical ordeal for Chu Zhang. Eventually, the origin of Chu Zhang's own soul gradually gained the upper hand, beginning to cover and correct the initial memory belonging to Daoist ancestor Xingqiu. The rationality belonging to Daoist ancestor Xingqiu in Chu Zhang's eyes rapidly dissolved, replaced by incredulous shock, heart-wrenching pain, overwhelming regret, and anger. His consciousness fully awakened, retrieving complete memories. He slowly lowered his head and looked at Song Lingxue in his embrace. She quietly leaned into the crook of his arm, her eyes completely closed, long eyelashes still, without a hint of breath. On that pale face covered in ice cracks, the final frozen expression was of deep exhaustion and a trace of liberating peace. The last thread of life within her body had completely severed. The temperature around her was rapidly dissipating, gradually becoming cold, as the Tao seed carrying heavenly fate and countless memories at her brow shattered entirely, transforming into specks of faint light, slowly scattering away. The 2.5 parts of heavenly fate originally belonging to him, like a docile stream, gently merged into his body, converging seamlessly with his original 3 parts of heavenly fate, without any conflict, becoming indistinguishable from each other. The heavenly fate in his hand suddenly surged, reaching an unprecedented 5.5 parts, a vast power filling his limbs and bones, capable of commanding parts of cosmic authority with a mere gesture. However, at this moment, this power sufficient to make space and time tremble brought Chu Jing only endless coldness and irony. He had killed her with his own hands. Killed with his own hands the woman who sacrificed everything for him in the ancient times, his legally married wife, who knew him and accompanied him in this life. His fingertips uncontrollably began to tremble violently, causing his whole body to shake slightly. A severe pain arose from the depths of his divine soul, like millions of blunt knives cutting and stirring his heart repeatedly. Ling Xue. He opened his mouth slightly, his eyes instantly turning red, almost tearing apart. If this is the ending. If, after enduring countless hardships, traversing endless reincarnation, returning to this primordial era, the final result is still to end the life of his beloved with his own hands, then what meaning does everything he did have? This is absolutely not the outcome he desired. Unable to even protect his own wife, watching her die in his hands, what right or face does he have to speak of saving all beings? Endless grief and self-doubt, like towering waves, almost instantly engulfed him. But after all the experiences he had undergone, it only took a fleeting instant for his Tao heart to calm, quickly reacting and realizing something was wrong. There were too many problems, too many illogical issues. His memories were experiencing quite serious problems. The memories that first awakened atop the river of space-time belonged to Taoist ancestor Jingqiu. But this shouldn't be the case at all. He had been to the ancient times, his memories shouldn't be like this. Those memories had diluted and even twisted his emotions, attributing all actions to a cold grand plan and Tao conflict. Making his subconscious believe that sacrificing Xueqing or Song Ling Xue for the so-called reopening of Yin Yang was a reasonable and necessary choice. Memories continued to revive, and Chu Jing recalled encountering the good corpse incarnation at the end of the reincarnation road, the little Taoist, who seemed to have understood everything long ago, silently waiting for a certain result to come. Chu Jing took a deep breath, his chest heaving violently. The original sorrow and pain in his eyes instantly turned into a sharp chilling light. The root of all causes and the source of all problems lay with the master of heavenly fortune. Chu Jing took a deep breath, his eyes surging with an uncontrollable murderous intent. He silently placed Song Ling Xue's already cold and lifeless body carefully back into the Luguang jade box. He meticulously arranged her disarrayed hair at the temples, smoothed the wrinkles at her close corners, his gaze lingering on her pale face for a long time. Then, he gently closed the lid of the jade box, quietly sealing it. Having done all this, Chu Jing turned around, stepped out, leaving his own grotto. Heaven, returning to the endlessly roaring, mystery-filled river of space-time. Standing again atop the river of space-time, feeling the boundless currents beneath him containing the rise and fall of eternity, Chu Jing's mindset had already transformed from a moment ago. Feeling the surging, already 5.5 parts of tremendous heavenly fate within him, his eyes were filled with coldness. In this instant, he clearly sensed that the heavenly power fragment belonging to the master of heavenly fortune's evil corpse had already, unknowingly, fully merged into the foundation of his Tao, becoming a part of him. Heavenly power, he already possessed 2/3. With 5.5 parts of heavenly fate in addition to a key heavenly power fragment, the temporal dimension he occupied at this moment differed from the many ancestral realm beings still moving on the regular timeline. He seemed to have transcended, standing at a higher perspective, overlooking the ever-flowing river. He didn't pause, striding downstream. As long as he returns to the future, secures the remaining 4.5 parts of heavenly fate, assembling a complete set of 10 parts heavenly fate, he can open the reincarnation road, find that good corpse, and uncover the entire truth. He wants to know the truth of all this, to interrogate the master of heavenly fortune about what was done, to inquire if there remains any possibility of redemption. In the next instant, he took a step forward, flowing downwards, directly towards the future. Boom, the waves of time and years intertwined, sweeping towards Chujing. With his 5.5 parts of heavenly fate and the heavenly power fragment, in the river of space-time, he almost wielded partial privileges. Those temporal storms and disturbances failed to affect him in any way, he forcibly pierced through them, crushing them. Wherever he passed, the river surged, laws retreated. In an instant, he became a stream of light penetrating past and future, speeding along the river of spacetime, swiftly moving towards the future. As he occasionally lowered his gaze, he saw the illusory vision refracted by the river of spacetime, traces left behind by the fluctuation of heavenly fate. He witnessed Yanfeng at the peak of the river of spacetime, taking on 2 enemies single-handedly, slaying 2 beast ancestors of all heavens, and shattering the heavenly fate they carried in one fell swoop. As conflicts in the great universe began to arise, at that moment, the Erosion Sun Rain sensed the disturbance and activated the decree he left behind, unlocking the boundary with a key. Vast universe. Before the boundary, a figure hovered in the void, clad in a blood-red robe embroidered with dark golden patterns, seemingly burning slowly with the surge of surrounding laws. After opening the boundary, the Erosion Sun Rain simultaneously unveiled the second decree. Within the decree, there were 2 pieces of information, coordinates within the vast universe and a letter. On the letter, 3 large words were inscribed, to Yanfeng. Brother Yanfeng? The Erosion Sun Rain furrowed his brows slightly, a hint of confusion flashing in his eyes. Why would the ancestral Tao leave a letter for Yanfeng? And in this manner? Why not deliver it to him personally? He looked down at the letter in his hand, then gazed at the distant coordinates indicated in the decree, his heart filled with doubts. After hesitating for a moment, he chose not to open the letter clearly intended for Yanfeng. This was the most basic respect for the ancestral Tao. He composed his mind, identified the direction, tore through the gray void, and sped towards the location indicated by the coordinates. In an instant, he arrived at the coordinates. It was a palace. The palace's door was tightly shut, without any markings, only some faint, long-lost spirituality in the patterns of space-time law. What does this mean? Murmured the Erosion Sun Rain, his confusion deepening, his gaze once again returning to the letter for Yanfeng in his hand. After pondering for a long time, the Erosion Sun Rain finally suppressed the curiosity lurking deep within him, sending a cross-boundary message to Yanfeng within the great universe. Moments later, ripples spread across the void not far from the Erosion Sun Rain. A figure stepped out silently, clad in plain clothes, with a head full of silver hair, appearing to be around 30, with slightly yellow eyes exuding an indescribable heavy aging aura. It was Yanfeng. Seeing the Erosion Sun Rain, his expression was calm, with a hint of confusion in his eyes. You mentioned in your message that Jingchu left me a letter? Wasn't he dead recently? Why is there a letter for me here now? The Erosion Sun Rain slightly bowed to Yanfeng, paying a respectful salute, and handed over the unopened letter. This letter is indeed left by the ancestral Tao, hidden within the decree, and I have only opened it today according to his command. Yanfeng frowned slightly, sensing the aura of Jingchu, his doubts mostly dispelling. He said no more, raised his hand to take the letter, and opened it. The content of the letter was indeed very simple, even straightforward. It was an entrustment, hoping that in the future, when Song Lingxue encounters a life-and-death crisis and cannot save herself, he would find a way to preserve her life and safely send her to the vast universe, specifically to the ancient hall located not far ahead. And at the end of the letter, it revealed Song Lingxue's true identity. She is your master's reincarnation. To ensure Yanfeng takes this matter to heart, Chu Jun directly clarified Song Lingxue's identity in the letter left eons ago. Seeing these words, Yanfeng's ancient, unwavering gaze finally couldn't help but contract violently, and his fingers holding the letter tightened slightly. Song Lingxue, is the master's reincarnation? For a moment, Yanfeng's emotions swirled uncontrollably, unable to calm. He could not fully believe what the letter stated, as the matter was too absurd. Everything about the master was buried, and he couldn't even find a trace of the master's memory. Reincarnation and rebirth? How could it be so easy? Moreover, he hadn't ignored the woman named Song Lingxue before, secretly deducing her fate. Her destiny is fraught with misfortune, and she is doomed to face an extremely perilous calamity, almost a 10-death and no-life situation. Even if she managed to survive that calamity, her fate showed she would not live long. To believe or not to believe? Yan Feng fell into a brief silence, weighing various possibilities rapidly in his mind. After a while, Yan Feng slowly raised his head, the ripples in his eyes already calmed, carefully folded the letter in his hand, and tucked it into his chest. Looking at the erosion sun rain, he asked solemnly, "When did Jingqiu entrust this decree to you?" The erosion sun rain did not conceal, answering truthfully, "This decree was given to me by the ancestral Tao shortly after I first reached the ancestral realm, and he instructed me of today's matter." When first reaching the ancestral realm, Yan Feng repeated softly, a flash of astonishment in his eyes. That point in time was unimaginably long ago from now. At that time, let alone Song Lingxue, even the Tao disputes within the entire great universe had not yet settled. How could Jingqiu have calculated this step so long ago? Not only calculating the master's reincarnation, but also her identity after reincarnation, and her destined future calamity? What a terrifying divination this is, completely surpassing the common path of fortune-telling. With this, the last shred of doubt in Yan Feng's heart also dissipated like smoke. He took a deep breath, steadying his tumultuous emotions completely. Since this concerns the master, he must do it no matter what. Protect Song Lingxue and send her into the vast universe. The most critical issue now is how to arrive in time when she encounters a life and death crisis. His lifespan was nearly exhausted, and he might not even live until that time. Moreover, how was he to safely transport him from the great universe to the depths of this vast universe's ancient hall in such a short time? Conventional methods would take a long time and could easily provoke unforeseen complications. A flash of inspiration suddenly crossed Yan Feng's mind. The supreme treasure of the Immortal Alliance, the Holy Spirit Plate. It was one of the treasured inheritances of the Immortal Alliance, capable of forcibly penetrating two boundary walls within a certain time and constructing a relatively stable passage. Retrieving the Holy Spirit Plate into his hand, at that moment he would leave behind a divine sense, which should be enough to ensure Song Lingxue's survival. However, since the Holy Spirit Plate is a significant treasure of the Immortal Alliance, utilizing it was by no means an easy task. One would either pay a huge price to trade with the Immortal Alliance or have to resort to extraordinary methods. A cold gleam flashed in Yan Feng's eyes. He said no more, took one last look at the nearby ancient hall, turned and stepped away, disappearing without a trace. Erosion Sun Rain looked in the direction where Yan Feng vanished, silent for a long time. He didn't know what Yan Feng had seen in the letter, but now, he only needed to wait for someone to arrive at the appointment, then activate the third decree. As for Yan Feng's earlier words about the ancestral Tao's death, that had nothing to do with him, he just needed to do what needed to be done. In the battle during the ancient times, the ancestral Tao survived, so naturally, there would be a backup plan. Chuzheng walked within the river of spacetime, his steps seemingly slow, but with each tread, time flowed along. His gaze was like a heavenly mirror hanging high above the ages, penetrating the layers of spacetime mist and falling into the great universe. He saw Yan Feng, after receiving the message, traverse the endless void, arrive at the vast universe, and take the crucial letter from Erosion Sun Rain. Subsequently, Chu Zhang's sight followed Yan Feng's figure, leaving the vast universe, entering the great universe, finding the candle star, and finally using half of heaven's fortune to retrieve the Immortal Alliance's supreme treasure, the Holy Spirit Plate. By then, Yan Feng's lifespan was like a candle in the wind, nearing its end. Chu Zhang stopped his steps through the river of spacetime, his gaze grew more complicated, following Yan Feng, watching the conclusion he chose for himself. Under his watchful eyes, Yan Feng arrived at the incomplete boundary, still in that grey robe, his face serene, with Feng Ting by his side. In the next moment, Yan Feng's physical body shattered with a roar, transforming into streaks of blood patterns, flowing toward the breach in the boundary. using his body to mend the boundary. It was to use all of himself to mend the world's deficiency. The blood patterns flowed and reached the edge of the boundary breach. With the nourishment of his flesh and blood, the shattered walls lightly trembled, the edges, like revived flesh, began to slowly heal. The whole process was silent. Chu Jing silently watched, observing the last traces of Yan Feng's existence completely dissipate. After a while, the gap in the boundary grew completely, restored to its original state. The moment the boundary gap was fully healed, a funeral bell resounded with a thunderous boom. The bell's majestic sound lingered, resonating continuously in the divine soul depths of many in the ancestral realm, carrying an indifferent Tao resonance. A martial ancestor who stood atop the myriad realms, at this moment, had completely fallen. Within the river of spacetime, Chu Jing still stood quietly. The bell that resounded in the minds of all in the ancestral realm echoed likewise within his spirit. Looking at the restored boundary, Chu Jing's thoughts, like a tipped-over bottle of various flavors, grew increasingly complex and indescribable. Yan Feng was Xue Qing's only remaining disciple, and now he had also passed away. The outcome of today, though his own choice, was a consequence of his opening of the boundary's breach. No matter what, Yan Feng's fate had ultimately reached its end, passing unnoticed. Even those in the ancestral realm, transcending mundane life and death, still struggled within larger causes and destiny. Chu Jing shifted his gaze from the boundary, looking toward Feng Ting nearby. Feng Ting apparently was long prepared, his body erupting with immortal light, collecting the heaven's fortune belonging to Yan Feng that was about to dissipate into the world. Thus, the heaven's fortune of the immortal Tao changed to 2.5. Chu Jing took a deep breath, withdrew his gaze, ready to continue forward when an unexpected change arose. Having absorbed half of heaven's fortune, with his aura surging greatly, Feng Ting seemed to sense something, suddenly raising his head, his gaze piercing through spacetime, landing on the river of spacetime above. In the next instant, Feng Ting stepped forth, surrounded by the surging spacetime laws, forcibly tearing open a fleeting entrance connecting to the river of spacetime. His figure merged into it, reappearing before Chu Jing. The two, in this vast river bearing endless ages, were at arm's length. The river flowed beneath their feet, countless spacetime fragments flitting past them like fleeting shadows, reflecting the myriad heavens and realms, illusions of the past and future. Chu Jing remained silent, watching the suddenly appearing Feng Ting, and in the depths of his eyes, a faint golden light slowly emerged. Beyond the massive immortal Tao aura from the newly absorbed, yet to be fully refined, half of heaven's fortune on Feng Ting, Chu Jing also sensed a very subtle familiar presence. That presence did not belong to Feng Ting himself, but originated from the heaven's fortune enveloping him. The source of this aura was all too familiar to Chu Jing. It was Yun Tianji. The one who rose during the primordial era and single-handedly built the immortal alliance. He was still alive, and his aura had apparently become indistinguishably entwined with the immortal Tao heavenly destiny. Now it seemed, the heavenly destiny true spirit's warning from later generations was also Yun Tianji's arrangement. Some ripples stirred in Chu Jing's heart, but he was not surprised, having already noticed a clue during the ancient times. It now appeared that Yun Tianji had finally succeeded, existing alongside the good corpse. Feng Ting gazed at the figure suddenly appearing in the river of spacetime, one he couldn't see through at all, and his expression became extremely solemn, as if facing a formidable foe. He spoke lowly, his voice resonating through the river of spacetime. "Who are you?" Chu Jing did not answer his question. His gaze pierced through Feng Ting's flesh and divine soul, directly observing the hidden mark belonging to Yun Tianji deep within. Endless thoughts flashed like lightning in his mind. This contest for the Tao, continuing since the primordial era, was finally reaching an end. After a moment's silence, Chu Jing gave Feng Ting a deep look, then decisively turned away, ignoring Feng Ting, full of wariness, and walked toward the future. To him, killing Yun Tianji now was merely a matter of lifting his hand. Before the 5.5 of heaven's fortune, no one could stir up any waves. Chu Jing followed the trajectory of the river of spacetime, flowing toward the future. Along the way, fragments of time swirled around him, reflecting countless pasts he had heard of but never witnessed. he saw Fu Pinglan holding the Tao Tribulation Stick, stepping into the vast universe, traveling by borrowed Tao. After borrowing the Tao, Erosion Sun Rain, following his command, opened the third decree, standing solemnly outside the ancient hall, waiting for him to walk out from the stone hall again, without the slightest doubt from beginning to end. Chu Jing continued forward, his gaze penetrating the fog of the Chaos Sea, witnessing a great battle between Fu Pinglan and Incarnation of Incense Xingqiu. At the same time, the decree he left in the distant past for the Qi cultivators was also triggered and opened. He saw Tai Ching, upon receiving the order, enter the Taoist ancestor heavenly palace suspended above the 33 cloud peaks with a heavy expression, secretly discussing with Xianwei Taoist ancestor. Subsequently, under the leadership of Tai Ching Daozu, numerous Qi cultivators quietly withdrew from the chaos of the mortal world, retreating into the pre-prepared cave heaven-blessed land, avoiding disaster while waiting for the return of the Taoist ancestor. All of this was within his ancient deductions and arrangements. Witnessing it firsthand now, his heart was calm. He continued forward, then he saw the moment that decided the fate of the Tsangyun realm. Fu Pinglan, wielding the Tao Tribulation Stick, came killing madly, and the Tsangyun realm, which had nurtured countless living creatures and carried all of Chu Jing's memories of his reincarnation's beginning, exploded before his eyes. The stars extinguished, the continents disintegrated, and billions of living creatures turned to cosmic dust in an instant. Standing in this perspective, with the keen insight endowed by numerous heavenly fortune, Chu Jing clearly saw the peculiarity on Fu Pinglan. In the depths of his violent blood and qi, another dominant qi was hidden, originating from Jun Huang. He borrowed heavenly fate and entered Fu Pinglan's body together, but as Fu Pinglan willingly faced death, Jun Huang's strand of qi was utterly obliterated by the backlash of spacetime. The flow speed of spacetime around gradually stabilized, and the rushing river became relatively gentle. Chu Jing stopped his footsteps. He had returned to the spacetime node where he belonged. The universe before him was still the same as when he left. The starry sky was utterly silent. The once vast ocean of stars now only had sparse, dim remnants, like the skeletons left after a giant beast's decay, floating in the cold void. In the distance, the silhouette of the great immortal realm was faintly discernible, but the once glorious great realm that illuminated eternity, brimming with immortal qi, was now a mere large remnant, seemingly abandoned in the corner of spacetime as a grave. The air was filled with the desolate aura of the end of all things, the end of the epic. Chu Jing's eyes were slightly cold. Without hesitation, he invoked the mighty 5.5 of his heavenly fortune within. Boom, the heavenly fortune within the entire great universe surged in an instant, like a primordial beast that had slept for eons suddenly awakened, emanating a terrifying pressure that made the entire great universe tremble. An invisible force of attraction, centered on Chu Jing, exploded outward, instantly disrupting all the immortal Tao fortune scattered between heaven and earth. In an instant, the immortal Tao heavenly destinies scattered across the universe, like rivers converging into the sea, were irresistibly summoned, and began frantically converging in one direction. At the end of that direction was the remains of the great immortal realm. There, once the core of the immortal Tao, has now become the last gathering point of immortal Tao destiny. Chu Jing took a step forward, the space-time law beneath his feet naturally forming steps, ignoring the vast distance of star space, heading straight towards the silent remnants of the immortal realm. At the center of the great immortal realm's remnants was the Lingxiao Jade Hall and Yaoqi Holy Realm, all no longer existing, leaving only a twisted ruin. Now, this place was filled with a vast, boiling ocean. It was an ocean formed from the pure power of heavenly fortune. All the flows of light representing the qi of immortal Tao surged madly, colliding, roaring, exuding unwillingness and a hint of despair at the end of the road. At the instant of Chu Jing's arrival, this sea of heavenly fortune seemed to be intensely agitated, boiling to the extreme. All the multicolored lights of heavenly fortune, compressed and condensed by an invisible giant hand, finally manifested a figure in the center of that ocean. It was a man, looking to be in his early 20s, dressed in a simple white robe, his long hair tied with a simple wooden hairpin, his features strikingly perfect, ethereal and jade-boned, possessing a transcendent elegance, as if gathering all the spiritual beauty of heaven and earth. His eyes were as clear as the springs of the 9 heavens, within which the immortal light welled deeply like heaven and earth. It was Yun Tianji. Compared to the primordial era, his appearance seemed unchanged. Time had left no trace upon him, only his eyes, steeped with the wisdom of eternity and a trace of serenity in comprehending the end. He silently gazed at Chu Jing, his expression alarmingly calm, as if having awaited this moment for a long time. Jing Chu. Yun Tianji spoke, his voice warm like jade, without a hint of hostility or fear, more like old friends reunited. He paused slightly, with a hint of reminiscence and emotion in his tone, continued. After that battle in the ancient times, I already had a premonition, felt in the end it would be your victory, and now it seems, that feeling was indeed not wrong. His eyes dimmed slightly, a trace of undetectable regret flashing through, lightly shaking his head. I once intended to uphold Grandpa's legacy, further glorifying the immortal path, but alas, in the end, it was hard to defy the grand trend. Chu Jing looked at him, gently shook his head, and said in a calm tone, Immortals have existed since ancient times and will exist in future generations. They were not created by Xu Sheng, nor do you need to worry about them. His gaze pierced through the ages, looking towards the future. In later generations, there will be an epoch where the immortal path flourishes alone, and the river of spacetime alternates as it ought to. In any era, the Taoist orthodoxy will persist, growing silently in corners. When one path becomes impassable, living creatures will inevitably attempt to carve out another path. This is unavoidable. In any era, there will never be a shortage of pathfinders and successors. The unfinished paths of the predecessors will naturally be slowly completed by the future generations. His gaze refocused on Yun Tianji, carrying a faint hint of pity. Xu Sheng, including you, is merely a tiny figure among many. The immortal path neither begins with him nor prospers because of him. Yun Tianji was momentarily stunned upon hearing this, his eyes flickering with a slight realization, which then turned into a deeper sense of relief. He shook his head slightly, and even the corners of his lips curled into a faint arc of self-mockery. The scenery in your eyes is beyond my reach. From ancient times, success defines the king, and failure the bandit. From the ancient times, you've prepared numerous backup plans until today, and in this world, you've received the support of many noble individuals. The heavenly mandate rests with you, not me. He acknowledged failure candidly, with no resentment in his tone, only calmness. Just take the fortune then. With these words, he slowly closed his eyes, saying no more, voluntarily dispersing the immortal Tao laws around him, with no intention of resisting. Originally, Chu Jing had only 30% of the heavenly fate. Relying on his own foundation and these additional 25%, there might still be room for struggle or a chance of victory. Yet in the face of Chu Jing, who now held 55% of the heavenly fate and was at his peak, any resistance would be a futile fight of a trapped beast, only appearing more embarrassing and humiliating. Rather, he chose to preserve this final dignity for himself. In the battle of the Tao, losing simply means losing. Chu Jing looked at his calm readiness for death, his expression remaining calm, as he spoke mildly. I previously promised the Moonlight Immortal Ancestor to give the immortal path a chance of survival, and naturally, I will. You need not worry too much. Before the words had fully left his mouth, he raised his hand, pointed like a sword, and gently pointed at Yun Tianji. Yun Tianji's form, condensed by heavenly fate, began to fracture inch by inch like sand in the wind, disintegrating into the most original heavenly fate, and finally vanished completely into nothingness. A broken jade token, edges displaying irregular fractured marks, emerged where he disappeared, emitting a gentle and restrained mysterious radiance. Heavenly Power Fragment. It was also the last piece. In an instant, the 25% of heavenly fate belonging to the immortal path lost its final constraint, pouring into Chu Jing like a collapsed celestial river. Chu Jing paid no mind to the fluctuations of this heavenly fate, reaching out to grasp the last heavenly power fragment in his hand. The fragment felt cool to the touch, and without any hesitation, he operated his original Tao seed, completely absorbing it and merging it with himself. At the moment when the 3 heavenly power fragments fused into one, an unprecedented feeling flooded his heart, and in that instant, He seemed to connect with the entire great universe, with heaven and earth in his grasp. Heaven and earth, all laws, seemed to be at his whim. He felt as if he had become the embodiment of these rules, the true heavenly lord of this realm. The complete heavenly power was now fully in his hands. However, amidst this ultimate sense of authority, Chuzheng slightly furrowed his brows. He did not feel the sense of perfection. This portion of heavenly power seemed to still have something missing. A layer of invisible veil still lingered over this complete heavenly power, or perhaps a critical core element remained beyond his true grasp. Reincarnation Road. In the Heaven Burial Palace, the Master of Heavenly Fortune had once told him that the first thing to do upon returning to the world was to open the reincarnation road and slay his good corpse divine thought. Clearly, this final missing piece, the ultimate answer, still lay upon the reincarnation road. As Chuzheng completely absorbed the immortal path's last 25% of heavenly fate, returning the heavenly power to wholeness, a great upheaval occurred throughout the entire great universe. Throughout the broken great immortal realm and scattered across the vast great universe, all cultivators of the immortal path, regardless of cultivation level or location, were struck as if by lightning. Countless immortal path cultivators felt their immortal power rapidly fading like a receding tide, the clearly perceptible heaven and earth laws becoming vague as if separated by a thick wall. During cultivation, the influx of spiritual energy slowed drastically, and its circulation within the meridians became exceedingly difficult, like moving under the burden of a 10,000-pound weight, with every step accompanied by tearing pain. Breaking through bottlenecks had become a distant luxury, and even maintaining their current realm felt beyond reach, with their Tao foundation showing faint cracks. This sensation was not experienced for the first time. They had once felt such foundational instability when the Heavenly Fortune Immortal Tablet shattered. But this time, the feeling was clearer and more thorough, as if the towering pillar supporting their Tao path had completely collapsed at this moment. The sky of the immortal path had collapsed for the second time. But this time it collapsed more thoroughly, leaving no room for luck. Holding the complete heavenly power and bearing 80% of the heavenly fate, Chuzheng's perception now covered the entire great universe. In an instant, he sensed the aura of the other four heavenly fates, like lighthouses in the dark, shining brightly in his perception. For Chuzheng, who now is almost equal to the heavens, he doesn't even need to be present to forcibly draw this heavenly fate from afar. Heavenly fate is inherently the possession of him, the heavenly lord. But after pondering for a few moments, he did not choose such a domineering and direct method. Chuzheng took a step forward, his figure merging into the void, and in the next instant, appeared within the 10,000 realms domain, a sacred place transcendent to the world. The Taoist school's 33 heavens beyond heaven. This is not a physical heavenly realm, but a holy land constructed from the purest innate pure qi and supreme laws. Looking around, the sea of clouds royals, auspicious beasts gather and soar, and ancient and grand Tao palaces and divine structures float atop the sea of clouds, adhering to invisible steps of laws, climbing layer by layer towards the peak that seems to touch the cosmic origin. Countless rays of rosy light and thousands of strands of auspicious colors adorn the sky, while the sound of the great Tao gently resounds in the background, washing over the divine soul and spirit, involuntarily filling one with awe. Within the Tao Palace at the highest point, the Xianwei Taoist ancestor and the Taiqing Daozu stand side by side outside the palace gate, seemingly having awaited for a long time. The fierce changes in heavenly fate within the great universe, for such beings, they naturally have vaguely perceived it. When they saw Chuzheng's silhouette stepping out of the void, both their hearts trembled. They clearly felt the deep, profound heritage on this person before them, one that had traversed countless reincarnations and witnessed the rise and fall of epochs, far beyond what he was before. The one before them was no longer the reincarnation body who required their support but a true Tao ancestor who spanned ancient times and wielded the authority of heavenly fate. Greetings, Tao ancestor. Both bowed in unison, their tone filled with heartfelt respect. Chuzheng cupped his hands in return, his expression calm. I have come today to take the fate, and thank you both for your previous support. At this, Xianwei and Taiqing were both startled and quickly stepped back half a step, not daring to receive such a full ceremony. Xianwei Taoist ancestor shook his head, speaking sincerely. Dao ancestor exaggerates, this was originally our duty. Without Dao ancestors' help in the past, I would have died without a burial place. How would I have had today? Taiching Daozu also spoke, looking calm. This heavenly fate was not something I fought for myself, it came because of its time and now leaves because of the time, which is nature's way. What Dao ancestor does is to quell the ancient Dao struggles and seek a future for all living beings. This trifling heavenly fate, Dao ancestor can take it. Chu Jing sighed slightly in his heart and did not speak further. He raised his hand and gestured softly towards the two. In an instant, a clear sense of extraction enveloped Xianwei and Taiching. They could clearly feel the source, which had been tightly connected with their Dao seed, bringing endless creation and power, being gently extracted by a gentle force. As the heavenly fate left their bodies, their faces visibly aged at a speed they could see, their upright postures slumped slightly, the surging Dao rhyme around them rapidly diminished, and their lifespan significantly reduced like a floodgate had been opened. Yet their eyes remained peaceful, even with a hint of relief and tranquility. In the next life, I will grant both of you a great fortune. Seeing their state declining, Chu Jing left a promise, then turned and stepped out, disappearing into the beyond heaven. He did not pause and in the next step, descended directly upon the Buddhist Pure Land. He stood atop Spirit Mountain, beneath him golden clouds, with faint, mighty Buddhist chants in his ears. Bathed in Buddha's light, the compassionate and perfect Shizuan, the Buddha, was already seated upon the 9-grade golden lotus, waiting for his arrival. Seeing Chu Jing, the Buddha chanted a Buddha name, his voice like a great bell resounding through the Pure Land, Amitabha Buddha, laboring the Tao ancestor to sacrifice himself for the world first, to save all sentient beings. This is infinite merit, supreme compassion. For Chu Jing's purpose of coming here, he had clearly insightfully foreseen it. The Buddha, his gaze clear, and with great enlightenment, slowly said, "This humble monk once vowed to ferry all beings in the universe, this body can be sacrificed, this aspiration unwavering, hoping for the next life to eternally reside in the underworld spring, guiding lost souls to the other shore, praying for the heavenly Lord's ascent." Seeing Chu Jing nod, the Buddha immediately radiated boundless glorious Buddha light, illuminating the entire Pure Land, without any hesitation, directly choosing to merge with the Tao and go. His figure gradually faded within the brilliant Buddha light, eventually becoming one with it, returning to the heaven and earth origin. Spirit Mountain trembled, mighty Buddhist chants spontaneously arose, and countless Buddha sons recited sutras together, chanting for the Buddha's grand aspiration. Chu Jing silently collected this half of heaven's fortune from the Buddhist, his gaze solemn. Following the last trace of heavenly fate's sense, he arrived at a remote great realm, forgotten at the edges of the myriad realms. In this great realm, the spiritual energy is so sparse it is almost exhausted, the laws obscure and unclear, as if it has been abandoned by the mainstream universe. At high noon, hanging in the heavenly dome, 2 scorching suns mercilessly bake the vast land. Looking around, the earth is barren for thousands of miles, the mountains are mostly bare rocks, presenting a withered and desolate gray-yellow hue. In this desolation, amidst a range of mountains, a solitary peak rises, piercing the sky like a sharp sword, stabbing at the double suns of the firmament. Atop the peak, a layer of clear radiance, as if tangible, cleverly isolates the intense heat of the double suns and the deathly silence of the world, forming a clear and pure realm of its own. Chu Jing stepped out, already standing atop the peak. The peak is flat, with a small courtyard built upon it, stark to the extreme, composed merely of 3 to 5 seemingly ordinary bamboo and wooden houses, and the fence casually woven with the most common dead branches and vines. The courtyard was devoid of flowers and grass, only a piece of bluish-black mountain rock polished smooth as a mirror, and several odd stones that seemed randomly scattered yet subtly resonated with the rhythm of the surrounding world. The entire courtyard exuded an aura of returning to simplicity, a purity in harmony with the Tao. Chu Jing's gaze fell upon the large bluish-black sword-polishing stone in the courtyard. A young boy kneeled there, fully absorbed in what he was doing. The boy appeared to be around 15 or 16, with a slightly thin build. He wore a set of rough, faded linen clothes, holding a simple, ancient-style black longsword, its blade dull with no hint of sharpness. He was slowly and steadily moving the longsword over the whetstone. His movements carried a rhythm akin to the Tao, each push seemed to be infused with all his mind and will. The boy seemed oblivious to Chu Zheng's intrusion, his eyes clear and pristine, like an untainted mountain spring, reflecting only the sword in his hands and the stone below him, with no other distractions. Sensing Chu Zheng's approach, the boy's sword-polishing motion paused slightly, and he lifted his head. In that instant he raised his head, his previously clear and tranquil eyes suddenly turned sharp and unrivaled, as if two invisible sharp swords shot out from them, the aura pressing. His cultivation wasn't considered strong, only having just entered the ninth order, but his entire sword chi was refined and pure, pointing directly to the essence of the sword Tao. Chu Zheng looked at this boy, a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He didn't expect that after the ancient times, in a world where circumstances had drastically changed, a true son of heaven would still emerge. In an instant, he perceived the karmic connections on this boy's body. The boy's name was Yi Luyun, the last sword ancestor of the sword Tao in the myriad realms. Before his lifespan ended and he was about to sit in meditation and pass away, discovered this unpolished jade, choosing him as the sole heir to his sword Tao, and bestowed upon him the half of heaven's fortune he carried as a final gift, thus creating a future unparalleled sword master destined to shake all heavens. I am here to claim the fortune. Chu Zheng spoke, his voice calm, breaking the silence of the courtyard, but you could obtain this heavenly fortune because of your own enlightenment of the sword heart and coherence with the sword Tao. I can offer you a chance as an exchange, what do you want? He didn't choose to take it by force, but instead gave the boy a middle ground choice. Yi Luyun merely paused slightly, then shook his head, his gaze returning to the black longsword in his hands, his tone indifferent yet firm. The heavenly fortune, you may take it, without the fortune, I am still me, the sword in my hand unchanged. Though young, his sword heart was enlightened, as if he had long seen through the void of external things, understanding that only the sword in his hand and the Tao in his heart were fundamental. This mindset was extremely rare. Chu Zheng's eyes flickered, he said no more, and slowly raised his hand. The half of heaven's fortune, like a gentle stream, quietly flowed out from the boy's body, pooling into Chu Zheng's palm. The boy's body barely trembled slightly, as if he noticed something that had always been there disappear, but he showed no sign of loss or panic, only lowered his head, continuing the unfinished action of slowly polishing the sword. What I said earlier still stands. Once you have decided, feel free to find me. Chu Zheng left a jade talisman on a stone in the courtyard and stepped out, leaving this otherworldly place. The next moment, he arrived above the ninth heaven, in a space-time forbidden area where even time and space seemed nearly frozen. He completely absorbed the newly acquired 2 parts of heavenly fortune from Taoist and sword Tao into his body. Boom, the 10 parts of heavenly fortune finally reached perfection. The surging power of heavenly fortune merged entirely into his Tao seed, the previously immense foundation of heavenly fortune, at this moment, like the final source stream had been injected, stirred no ripple, only a sense of natural, seamless perfection and vastness. He stood quietly in the forbidden area, feeling within him that boundless power that could seemingly rule the rise and fall of the universe and all Tao with a single thought. For a while, Chu Zheng suddenly opened his eyes, as if light that could split the heavens and earth flashed through them. He raised his hand, pointing like a sword, lightly slashing at the void before him. Rip, a vast passage radiating a yellow halo was forcibly torn open in the void. On the other side of the passage was not the familiar universe starry sky, but a world filled with that yellow halo. The Yellow Springs. He forcibly opened the entrance to the Yellow Springs, unlocking the path to the reincarnation road. Chu Zheng stepped into the passage, his figure vanishing from the space-time forbidden area. At the moment of entering the reincarnation road, a mystic force capable of corroding all life and Yuan Qi enveloped him again. The air was filled with strange laws that shortened lifespan and bewildered spiritual wisdom. Since the initial division of the universe, he was likely the first to step into this place in human form, relying on his own immense power. Chu Zheng disregarded the erosion of the surrounding environment and continued onward, soon seeing again that ancient reincarnation road emitting a hazy glow, filled with numbed residual souls. Beside the reincarnation road, near the peculiar stone reflecting the three lives, that figure remained standing quietly. The little Taoist in the moon-white Taoist robe, the good corpse incarnation of the master of heavenly fortune, he seemed as if he had never left. Seeing Chu Jing tread over the brilliant radiance of the reincarnation road, his being emitting flawless perfection and control over everything with 10 parts of heavenly fortune, the little Taoist's expression showed visible solemnity for the first time. He did not wait for Chu Jing to question him but took the initiative to step forward, coming directly in front of Chu Jing. Now, can you give me an explanation? Chu Jing frowned slightly, speaking in a deep voice. He knew that all this before him was inextricably linked to the manipulation of this little Taoist behind the scenes. The little Taoist looked at the almost explosive anger in Chu Jing's eyes, shook his head slightly, and his expression returned to that detached indifference. What I said to you before was not false, but there was a slight deviation. He paused, meeting Chu Jing's cold gaze, and said slowly, "You were not following the ancient history before. It is precisely because of those deliberate arrangements you made that today's events unfolded." Chu Jing instantly understood the earth-shattering implication in the little Taoist's words. A chill shot up his spine to his heavenly spirit, and his fingertips trembled uncontrollably. "Are you saying, the ancient history was always like this?" It was not that he was acting in accordance with a predetermined ancient history, but that his actions now, every choice he made after returning to the ancient times, were personally creating the ancient history he knew. It is precisely because of your choices back then that today's ancient history exists. The little Taoist's voice was calm as if undisturbed by waves, yet every word was like a knife. The memory that you awakened first at the peak of the river of spacetime is the turbulence beyond the ancient history because you actively disrupted time and space, thus your divine sense was buried in the ancient times. However, your body did not immediately die. The incomplete memory took charge, leading to the unintended consequences that resulted in the situation of killing your wife. You have been deceiving me all along. Chu Jing clenched his palm tightly, his knuckles turning white from exertion. He took a deep breath, using all his strength to barely suppress the fury that threatened to tear his chest apart. "I did not deceive you." The little Taoist shook his head again, his tone still indifferent. "It was just that some things were not spoken openly. The ancient history is something you changed with your own hands." He looked at Chu Jing, his expression as calm as ever, explaining softly, "I brought you from the previous epoch to this era precisely to find a successor. Back then, you indeed met Xue Qing, and Xue Qing also had a good impression of you, but your mind was set on making a name for yourself in history, determined to accomplish a world-shaking deed like no other before or after. Thus, due to circumstances, the two of you were destined but not destined partners and did not become Tao companions. The subsequent ending, as I told you in the Heaven Burial Palace, is still the truth. Xue Qing died at the end of the epoch while aiding you in seeking help, and you also fell during the hunt by the ancient ancestors, resulting in death and Tao collapse. By this point, according to the original trajectory, you should not have been the master of heavenly fortune." Upon saying this, a slight pause came to the little Taoist's words, and an inexplicable confusion flashed in his eyes, but within the ancient history, one of the greatest unexpected events occurred, which was, your reincarnated divine sense returning to the ancient times. His gaze toward Chu Jing carried an aura of scrutiny. "Your return to the ancient times is truly too incredible. I can only say that this was a deliberate arrangement by the river of spacetime itself, a variable I could not fully predict. Otherwise, with the intensity of your remaining divine sense at that time, it would have been utterly impossible to last to the primordial era, as it would have been completely worn away by the sands of time. You clearly told me that ancient history is unchangeable." Chu Jing took a deep breath, his voice carrying a hint of hoarseness. "True history has never been altered from the beginning to end. What I spoke of was merely events that occurred on another path." The little Taoist shook his head slightly, saying directly, "I gave you the choice back then. When you first came to the near immortal realm in the ancient times, I asked you which path you wanted to take. The path you are on now is the one you chose yourself. I already gave you the opportunity, it was you who let go of it." Hearing this, Chu Jing was momentarily stunned, observing the little Taoist before him, frowning slightly. "Are you the good corpse?" A slight doubt emerged in his heart, as these words didn't seem like something the good corpse could articulate. The good corpse is me, the evil corpse is me, and the heavenly Lord is also me. The little Taoist shook his head slightly. In the Heaven Burial Palace, I was the one who communicated with you. It was also I who divined for Shui Qing, instructing both the good and evil corpses to kill you. I have already warned you before that choosing this path will lead to many unpleasant events for you, but you cannot reverse them because this era belongs to me, not you. I simply followed the ancient history and played a game of chess. You are on the chessboard, while I am above the game. The little Taoist took a deep breath, his demeanor serious, and spoke solemnly, now it's your turn to make your move. What is the origin of the soul division? After a moment of silence, Chu Jing's expression subtly shifted. What did you say to Ling Xue? Song Ling Xue was the expression of feelings that Shui Qing voluntarily severed. I did not provide her with any instructions, all the choices were her own decisions. Looking at Chu Jing, the little Taoist's eyes deepened, or rather, all of this is your own arrangement. She is the only living creature to achieve Dao in the future of this epoch. With the Dao flower blooming in a later generation, I cannot interfere, that belongs to your era. The little Taoist shook his head slightly, appearing a bit weary, gesturing with his hand. After you cut me down, you can control reincarnation and reclaim the universe's heavenly fate. You will be the true heaven, whether it's Song Ling Xue or Shui Qing, her reincarnation is at your command. Don't think too much, just take action. He had waited here too long. Heaven is omnipotent, with the entirety of time and space beneath one's feet. Why do you need to find a successor? Chu Jing raised his gaze, looking at the little Taoist before him, his eyes sharp as blades. To this day, I still don't know your name. The little Taoist's expression tensed slightly but did not answer Chu Jing's question, remaining silent. In this world, no one knows your name, you are only called heaven. Chu Jing lowered his gaze, a hint of a smile blooming on his face, murmuring softly, without even leaving a name, what's the point of being the master of heavenly fortune? The tasks you mentioned might not require becoming the master of heavenly fortune to accomplish. I may not be limited to a single path. As his words fell, Chu Jing raised his eyes, the anger within them almost manifesting as substance. He gazed at the 3 live stone beside the reincarnation road, lifting his hand to form a blade, and brought it down sharply. Swoosh, accompanying a soft noise, a piece of the 3 live stone was forcibly cut, landing in Chu Jing's grasp. Insight into past and present lives, clarifying the cause and effect of the future, with this, it is enough. The little Taoist's expression changed for a moment. Before he could speak, Chu Jing had already turned around, breaking the void beneath his feet, heading directly toward the great universe. The great universe, having lost all heavenly fate, underwent a fundamental transformation in silence. This change is not superficial but originates from the root vitality, as if the foundation supporting the active evolution of the entire great universe was quietly withdrawn, leaving only an empty shell. The myriad paths are withering, and all fortunes of the paths are gone. The once rainbow-like paths of fortune in the star space have now become dim and extremely vague, covered with thick dust. The spiritual perception of many cultivators resonating with heaven and earth has been isolated by an invisible barrier, becoming sluggish. Whether it's absorbing spiritual energy or comprehending the great Tao, it has become unprecedentedly difficult, like trudging through thick mire, where each step consumes 10 to 100 times the effort but yields little result. Not only do the immortal martial Taoist Buddhas who rely on Qi fortune experience this, but even the Qi cultivators are greatly affected. The path of a Qi cultivator is a solitary journey in itself. Even if a Qi cultivator occasionally receives heaven's favor and carries some heavenly fate, their blessing scarcely benefits others and cannot alter the overall trend of the path. Now, as the vitality at the cosmic origin level declines, the difficulty in sensing heaven and earth primordial Qi and tempering the body has suddenly multiplied, making the future path seem shrouded in an invisible mist, with no dawn in sight. The terrifying aura of the end of Dharma era descends, like a shadow that cannot be dispelled, looming over the hearts of all living creatures. All cultivation paths are slowly but surely heading towards decline. Unlike the soon-to-wither great universe, Chu Jing's own cave heaven world bursts forth with an extremely terrifying vitality. When Chu Jing steps from the great universe into the grotto heaven, it's as if moving from a desolate wasteland into a divine kingdom teeming with life. Here, the heaven and earth laws, owing to the complete integration of tenfold heavenly fate and the mastery of the whole heaven's mandate, have achieved unprecedented perfection. Heaven is no longer void but is a dome flowing with golden brilliance of the laws, and the earth is no longer ordinary but fertile soil nurturing infinite creative spiritual mechanisms. Looking around, heavenly fate is no longer an intangible and formless fortune but manifests as a majestic aura visible to the naked eye, like golden glow spread across the heavens and the earth, nourishing all things. The surging sea of clouds is not water vapor but pure spiritual mist. Mountains, rivers, and streams are structured by spirit veins and laws, gleaming with gentle light. The spirit beasts and creatures, once acting upon instinct, have almost entirely shed their mortal forms, awakened spiritual wisdom, and even experienced ancestral return, transforming into true divine beasts or even ancient holy spirits. Above the 9 heavens, there are ancient divine birds adorned in 7-colored feathers, with wings wide enough to obscure an entire star domain, traversing the magnificent sky, composed of nebulae and glow, emitting melodious cries in harmony with the great Tao. On the earth, ancient divine woods, with lush foliage covering numerous vast continents, have roots deep into the core, drawing the world's original power. Atop the canopy, instead of ordinary leaves, there are silhouettes of sun, moon, and stars. Their gentle sway seems to breathe, directing the grotto heaven world's pulse to rise and fall along with it. This is the perfect divine kingdom, belonging to Chu Jing alone, an eternal pure land transcending the decay of the outer world. Chu Jing's gaze does not linger long on these magnificent scenes. His figure silently appears in the core region of the cave heaven world. There is a tranquil and peaceful bamboo forest, with bamboo shadows swaying and spiritual energy transforming into a mist wisping through the forest. Deep in the bamboo forest, a simple yet elegant wooden house stands quietly. In front of the wooden house, a white figure has long been waiting. It is a woman wearing a spotless plain white long dress, her figure graceful, standing tall and slender, with a stunningly beautiful face, seemingly gathering all the world's spiritual beauty. Her skin is lustrous and translucent, surpassing the purity of snow and ice. Her pupils are like the finest glaze, untainted by the slightest dust, clearly reflecting the surrounding bamboo shadows and heavenly light. Between her brows is a vermilion mark, red as blood, almost seeming to contain an unquenchable flame of Tao, adding a touch of sacredness. She is the spirit deer that was by Bai Nian's side in the past, during the astonishing transformation accompanying the heavenly fate perfection in Chu Jing's cave heaven world. This naturally gifted white deer has undoubtedly gained unimaginable benefits, becoming a true living creature of the mythical realm. Noticing Chu Jing's arrival, the woman's expression slightly moves, a hint of fondness and awe flashing in her glaze-like eyes. Without any hesitation, she, as before, kneels respectfully to the ground, performing a grand salute of prostration, her voice reverent. "The emperor is above." Chu Jing's gaze instantly lands on her bosom, on the soul light she guards with her warm demonic power against her heart. His eyes suddenly become incomparably complex, with remembrance and sighs. When he first met Bai Nian in illusory spirit city, he never imagined today's scene. Bai Nian always knew what he wanted. He understood that eternal life and perpetual insight had become a distant, unattainable dream for him. Despite Bai Nian's talents, no matter how diligently he cultivates, he cannot resist the relentless erosion of time. Only by abandoning this fragile and transient mortal body and refining all of himself, including his divine soul and spirit, into an immortal magic treasure as an artifact spirit, can he possibly exist for a long time in another form, to continue following Chu Jing's footsteps and to witness those unimaginable vistas. At that time, Chu Jing agreed to him. However, he has never been able to find a suitable vessel that can bear his soul and match his wishes. Ordinary treasures of heaven and earth cannot withstand the ravages of time, unable to fulfill Bai Nian's vision. But now, Chu Jing has found that piece of spiritual material. A part of the 3 life stone, it is the most perfect and suitable vessel. Master. Bai Nian's soul light flickered slightly, sending out a weak soul power fluctuation, faintly excited. He vaguely guessed Chu Zheng's intention today, and thus the residual soul that had been silent for countless years stirred with slight emotional fluctuations. Chu Zheng slowly nodded, saying no more. He raised his hand, and a gentle force extended, gently drawing Bai Nian's residual soul from the embrace of the woman, suspending it above his palm. Simultaneously, with a thought, a cluster of chaotic true fire rose from his fingertip, containing the true intent of the universe's beginning and the return of all things to the void. The flame was not fierce, exuding the supreme Tao rhythm. With a gesture, Chu Zheng summoned the piece of stone material cut from the 3 live stone and cast it into the chaotic true fire. The fire of chaos silently burned, enveloping the piece of 3 live stone material. The stone material did not melt in the flames, instead, as if awakening, it began to slowly transform. The reincarnation laws and threads of karma contained within it were gradually activated, combed, and reorganized. Chu Zheng's gaze was intensely focused, meticulously controlling the full extent of heavenly fate and complete heaven's mandate, carefully crafting a masterpiece for the ages. As the shape was about to form, Chu Zheng pondered slightly, already having a plan in mind. Under the guidance of his divine sense, the form of the 3 live stone gradually changed, its outline became clearer. It did not transform into swords or bells or tripods, nor into shields or towers or palaces, but instead elongated, returning to flatness, ultimately becoming a book with an ancient style, its cover slightly heavy. The jade scroll was naturally condensed from countless constantly changing reincarnation runes, exuding a gentle jade light. In an instant, the jade scroll was completely formed, suspended within the chaotic true fire, the immaculate Tao rhythm permeating throughout. If you regret it now, it's still not too late. If you wish to reincarnate, I can offer you a lifetime of peace in the future. Chu Zheng reminded once again, the supreme treasure forged from the 3 live stone, its reincarnation indestructible, cannot possibly be destroyed. Once becoming its artifact spirit, Bai Nian would have no chance to regret. I hope you will fulfill this, Master. Bai Nian sent out a divine sense, without any hesitation. Upon hearing this, Chu Zheng did not hesitate any longer, gently sending the gentle residual soul of Bai Nian in his palm into the already formed jade scroll. At the moment the residual soul merged, the jade scroll lightly trembled, and countless golden lines resembling veins and meridians suddenly lit up on the cover. These lines corresponded with the reincarnation runes within the pages of the book, slowly intertwining, and finally, all the light and Tao rhythm converged inward, perfectly merging with Bai Nian's residual soul, making it the unique true spirit of this newly born supreme treasure. A supreme treasure, based on the 3 live stone, closely linked with the source of reincarnation, destined to subdue the yellow springs and harmonize yin and yang, thus was born. Chu Zheng gazed at this jade scroll exuding a mysterious aura, pondered for a moment, raised his hand, using his finger as a pen, his fingertip flowing with chaotic primordial qi and heavenly fortune golden light, slowly engraving 3 ancient characters containing supreme Tao rhythm on the warm cover of the book. 3 Lives Book. This object, based on the 3 live stone, is intimately connected. With this jade scroll, one can investigate the past and present lives of all living creatures in the yin-yang 2 realms, and even their future reincarnations, seeing through all entanglements of karma, discerning the trajectory of reincarnation and destiny. Currently, Bai Nian's true spirit, due to the significant consumption from merging with the supreme treasure, remains in slumber, needing a considerable amount of time to fully awaken and truly manage this 3 lives book. Chu Zheng glanced at the Lu girl beside him, still respectfully kneeling on the ground, a genuine joy on her face, said nothing more, and turned to leave. Taking a step forward, Chu Zheng left this bamboo forest, departing from his cave heaven world. At this moment, regarding the path he is about to take, how to reopen yin and yang, and reshape the heavenly order, he has already formed some concepts, but they are not yet perfect. In this world, he still has unfinished business. The laws of this era are all invisibly tied to heavenly fate, difficult to pass on to future generations. Once the laws are reshaped, the cultivators of this era will gradually fall into silence and demise due to the conflict of laws, until the new living creatures step onto the path of cultivation. Chujing glanced at the starry sky, stepping across the boundary, reappearing in the vast universe great realm. His arrival did not cause significant waves, but the perfectly immaculate tenfold heavenly fate and the complete heavens mandate resonating subtly with the laws of the vast universe great realm on his body made all the ancient ancestors have a sense of it. Chujing did not waste any time, summoning a portion of the ancient ancestors, straightforwardly stating his purpose. He came this time to collect the heavenly fate of the universe. The first to arrive were Erosion Sun Rain, Chuan, and other ancient ancestors who have survived since the late primordial era. Facing Chujing's request, Erosion Sun Rain and Chuan, and other ancient ancestors with deep ties to Chujing, naturally did not refuse. They have long seen through the changes in the world, understanding that this is an inevitable epic change and a necessary step for Chujing to reopen Yin and Yang. Chujing looked at these ancient ancestors, whether familiar or not, his expression calm, his gaze deep. "Thank you, everyone, for your long-lasting support and assistance. Xingqiu is deeply grateful, and in the next life, I shall surely give you all the opportunity to climb the peak again, where destiny aligns, the Tao path is smooth, free of disasters and tribulations, forever unburdened." He no longer used his original name, Chu Jing, and instead reported the name Xingqiu, simultaneously making a solemn promise. This promise is invaluable. It signifies that in the next epoch, Chu Jing will pave the way for them personally, providing them with a ticket directly to the ancestral realm, a lifetime of glory without any hindrance. Many ancient ancestors heard this and showed various expressions. Some were relieved, some were reflective, some were expectant, but ultimately, they all became calm. They all returned the salute to Chujing without saying much. Having survived the erosion of endless years, their peers long since died out, transformed into the dust of ancient history, entered reincarnation early. For them to live to this day is already a stroke of luck, their sole desire is nothing more than a next life. Chujing's promise is exactly what they need. Congratulations, Ancestral Tao. Erosion Sun Rain first bowed deeply, solemnly saluted, and then smiled calmly, without hesitation, actively dissipating the portion of heavenly fate he bore and the source of the ancestral realm that maintained his existence. The moment heavenly fate dissipated, the signs of the 5 decays of the universe descended instantly, his flesh began to show spots of decay, the light of his divine soul rapidly dimmed, and the surrounding laws began to collapse. This is the process that all living creatures in the universe must experience when reaching the end, painful and slow. Chujing did not let him endure this suffering of decay, raised his hand gently, and the soft celestial light enveloped Erosion Sun Rain, sending him on his final journey. Erosion Sun Rain's silhouette turned into droplets of light rain within the celestial light, eventually completely dissipating, leaving only a faint true spirit imprint, which Chujing collected into the 3 Lives book. Congratulations, Lord. Chuan looked deeply at Chujing, her eyes complex, containing too many unspeakable emotions, as if she wanted to say something but stopped. But ultimately, 1,000 words turned into a silent sigh. She too bowed deeply, then calmly dissipated her heavenly fate and cultivation foundation. Just before her soul was completely scattered, her gaze lingered on Chujing's face for a long time, as if to carry his image into reincarnation. Eventually, she followed closely behind Erosion Sun Rain, sent by celestial light, dissolved into rain, and her true spirit imprint was equally collected by Chujing. In the universe, most ancient ancestors chose to embark on their journey calmly, but a few ancestors were less willing to dissipate heavenly fate and abandon their current cultivation, their eyes filled with struggle and reluctance. However, for Chujing at present, being able to personally inquire about their opinion without directly stripping them was already quite rare. Chujing did not wish to argue excessively with them, waste time, and seeing them unwilling to resolve it themselves for long, he raised his hand directly, forcibly stripping their heavenly fate with heaven's mandate, and sent their true spirits into reincarnation, entering the true Yellow Springs netherworld, awaiting the next epoch's arrival. From then, all scattered heavenly fate within the great universe and the vast universe realms had completely returned to Chujing's control, and merged absolutely with the tenfold heavenly fate within him, with no distinction between the two. Now, he had already become an unprecedented ruler of two realms, mastering yin-yang, overlooking reincarnation. But, he still lacked the final step. There were still some karmic bonds that need settling, some mysteries that need answering. Chujing spent some time, using Heavenly Fate and the Three Lives book, began to trace back karma across reincarnation, pursuing those whose destinies are closely intertwined with him. He first sought out Sun-eroding Cry. At this moment, Sun-eroding Cry was situated within one of the great realms under the jurisdiction of the Martial Hall. In the grand hall filled with martial path scriptures, Sun-eroding Cry sat cross-legged on the central mat of the martial hall, surrounded by many martial cultivators with dense auras. Ji Zhouyin, Wan Wenfeng, and other martial ancestors were present, discussing Tao together. When the conversation peaked, Sun-eroding Cry laughed heartily, his face full of joy, as if he had already cast aside past grievances and the years of imprisonment. Upon seeing Chujing appear in the hall, Sun-eroding Cry's laughter paused slightly. He slowly stood, looking at the unfathomable Chujing before him, nearly breathing in sync with heaven and earth. His expression became somewhat complicated. At the first encounter with Xingqiu, he once thought that this person might accomplish something significant in the future, but he truly never imagined that this would grow to such an extent. An extent that could reshape the universe and rule two realms. Chujing solemnly bowed to Sun-eroding Cry, sincerely apologizing. Regretfully, Senior suffered imprisonment for many years. My heart is ashamed. Sun-eroding Cry shook his head slightly. His expression had already returned to calm, even carrying a hint of openness about seeing through the affairs of the world. In the contest of Tao, it's life or death. I have lived to this day by mere fate's luck, to witness epic changes with my own eyes, to see the lineage of the erosion sun still existing in the world, unbroken. This is already not easy. I dare not ask for more. Chujing looked intently at Sun-eroding Cry, suddenly, his brow slightly furrowing imperceptibly, sensing a trace of anomaly. According to the memories revived within him, and the records of time-space reincarnation, Xueqing perished at the intersection of epochs, and all traces of existence were nearly erased completely. Among all living beings in the great universe, except for him as a special case, there shouldn't be anyone who still remembers Xueqing's existence. It was the river of spacetime's autonomous correction. However, Sun-eroding Cry actually still remembered Xueqing. He showed no signs of being influenced by the river of spacetime. This was extremely mystical. The key to this mystery, perhaps even Sun-eroding Cry himself might not be clear. Chujing noted this in his mind, knowing it would require him some time to unravel. Suppressing the thoughts in his heart, Chujing asked, "Do you have any unfulfilled wishes, Elder? Before this epoch ends, I can help you achieve them." At this moment, when he is already unparalleled and about to reshape the heavenly order, he wants to resolve some karmic ties. The Sun-eroding Cry has helped him greatly, whether in his plans or in the previous protection during the ancient times. The Sun-eroding Cry remained silent for a long time, and the expression on his face gradually subsided, replaced by an unprecedented solemnity. He looked up, his gaze penetrating the star river of the universe, gazing at the ethereal heavenly Tao. "You are the new master of heavenly fortune, holding the reins of power. I have no other requests, only for a heavenly decree for the martial path." His expression was steadfast, and he spoke word by word. "I only seek that in the future, under the allowed heaven and earth laws, the martial path can, by its own strength, reach the true pinnacle of power, no longer bound by the abundance or scarcity of heavenly fortune." He paused, his tone growing heavier. "At the same time, I also implore you, the master of heavenly fortune, never to bestow the heavens' mandate upon any living creature. All living creatures, born and nourished between heaven and earth, should adhere to the heavenly order, following the natural Tao. If the heavens' mandate falls into the hands of living beings, regardless of their initial intentions, it will ultimately lead to chaos in the human heart, the expansion of desire, bringing about another catastrophe for all creatures under heaven, leading to a great cycle of tribulation." Chujing, upon hearing this, was silent for a moment. He naturally understood the deep meanings and foresight in the Sun-eroding Cry's words. The current eternal struggle of the Tao, the countless bloody and violent ages, at its root, began due to the heavenly fortune, because living beings attempted to grasp power and authority that did not belong to them. If the Master of Heavenly Fortune reclaims all heavenly fortune, then even though disputes in the great universe may still exist, they would be limited to the realms of living creatures' own abilities and wisdom, not escalating into timeless catastrophes that cannot be ended. Chu Jing slowly nodded, agreeing to this request, which was the original intention of him redetermining the heavenly order. As he finished speaking, his gaze fell on Wan Wenfeng beside him. Back then, you helped me fend off Fu Pinglan. I had said that I owed you a favor. Do you have any unfulfilled wishes today? My wishes have already been fully articulated by my ancestor. I have no other desires. Wan Wenfeng shook his head slightly. After the heavenly destiny true spirit had extracted the heavenly fortune from him, he thought a lot and no longer insisted. Now seeing Chu Jing again, he couldn't help but feel a bit emotional. When they first met, Chu Jing didn't even have the qualification for him to look directly at. Now, the world has turned upside down, time has changed its course. Chu Jing made a respectful gesture, silently leaving behind the true spirit of the sun-eroding cry, Wan Wenfeng, and Ji Zhouyin in the Three Lives book before turning to leave. From beginning to end, Ji Zhouyin, who was standing beside, never spoke, his expression peaceful. He had little interaction with Chu Jing, but Chu Jing remembered a favor to him, for he had taken great care of Songling Xue. Before Chu Jing rose to power, Ji Zhouyin had directly or indirectly helped him in restraining Fu Pinglan greatly. But now, all karma is resolved. Chu Jing put away the Three Lives book, continued forward, and arrived at a once glorious, now declining great realm to find Shang Tsongyun. Shang Tsongyun, now having relied on his own opportunities, has entered the realm of the immortal emperor. But due to the recent drastic changes in heavenly fortune, the entire immortal path declined, and his current state wasn't very good, his face somewhat pale, his breath slightly weak. Seeing Chu Jing appear, his expression was clearly startled. Regarding the various earth-shattering news in the outside world, from within this realm, he could only hear some vague and inaccurate snippets. But the news that Chu Jing is Jingchu, the reincarnation of the ancestral Tao, has already been confirmed by many signs. For a moment, looking at this junior whose aura could no longer be fathomed, his heart was filled with complex feelings, not knowing how to address him by what title or identity. Chu Jing, without engaging in small talk, directly stated his intentions of this visit, his voice calm. I am about to reopen the yin-yang universe and reshape the heavenly order. All traces of heavenly fortune will be buried by me completely. He looked at Shang Tsongyun and presented a choice. If you wish to become Qingzu at this moment, I can give you half of heaven's fortune, allowing you to glimpse the grandeur of the ancestral realm, fulfilling your cultivation longings. Although it was indeed due to his guidance and assistance that Shang Tsongyun previously broke free from the bloodline chains, Shang Tsongyun did indeed help him a lot before, thus Chu Jing is willing to help him once more to fulfill his desires. The choice Chu Jing offered caused Shang Tsongyun's breath to hitch and his heart to beat uncontrollably. Half of heaven's fortune, to become Qingzu. For any cultivator, this is almost the sought-after destination, the end of the road, the ultimate glory. The temptation is unimaginably immense. But Shang Tsongyun remained silent, ultimately shaking his head slowly, declining this gift that would drive any cultivator mad. To become Qingzu through Chu Jing's granted heavenly fortune, in his view, holds little meaning. From ancient times to the present, this vast universe, the majestic ancient history, seems to all be just a grand game of Jingchu. In this, he is merely a pawn, no different essentially from any other living being. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel a bit disheartened, sighing inwardly. Chu Jing was not surprised by Shang Tsongyun's choice, and he spoke once more. Do you have any unfulfilled wishes? I will do my best to help you achieve them. Shang Tsongyun hesitated for a long time, his gaze sweeping across the sky above, finally speaking slowly. I have no other requests, only hope that you allow the heavenly azure spirit mysterious scripture I created to be passed down. This scripture holds the blood of my heart throughout my lifetime. Though it cannot be considered the ultimate magic technique, it contains some of my shallow insights into the Tao, hoping it can inspire those who come after. Certainly. Chu Jing agreed, cupped his hands in salute, and then turned to leave. Afterward, he traversed the starry sky and found Zhao Tingxian. Compared to Shang Tsongyun, Zhao Tingxian's condition seemed worse, with an undeniable weariness in his expression. The backlash of the immortal path appeared particularly evident in him. Upon seeing Chu Jing, a complex look appeared on Zhao Tingxian's face. After hearing Chu Jing's intention, his smile deepened with a hint of self-mockery. Years ago, you taught me the way of balancing yin and yang, the path of incense spirituality, not just for your own plans, but it indeed pointed me to an unprecedented road, a great kindness. In the end, all matters between us have cleared, with neither of us indebted to the other. His tone was calm, but there was a trace of wistfulness in his eyes. Sometimes when I am alone, I can't help but wonder if I had chosen another path, not gotten entangled in the struggle of the heavenly fate, would things have been smoother now? He shook his head slightly, smiling with a hint of helplessness. If I had joined the Taishan sect back then, perhaps everything would have been different, at least. I could have found peace. The only consolation is that Shang Tsongyun was indeed wrong. When you paved the path for me years ago, there was a reason, not without cause. My intuition was correct. Regret filled Zhao Tingxian's words, but the current situation, with the world on the brink of dramatic changes, left him with no choice or room to struggle. Similarly, he declined Chu Jing's offer regarding the heavenly fate, leaving no specific desires or wishes concerning the present matters. Finally, Chu Jing's steps came to a halt outside a quite secluded, yet spiritually rich great realm. His gaze penetrated the boundary wall, falling upon a woman meditating in retreat inside. Song Lingqing. She sat quietly in a valley blooming with spirit flowers, her aura calm, seemingly unaffected by the dramatic changes in the world. Her appearance increasingly resembled Xue Qing's, along with her temperament gaining a touch of gentleness. Chu Jing lingered outside the realm for a long time, his gaze complex as he watched the figure in the valley. Countless tangled thoughts and emotions churned within him. But in the end, he ultimately did not step into that great realm, instead, turned silently and walked away. When Xue Qing chose to sever emotional ties during reincarnation, it was her last voluntary decision. She did not wish to see him again, nor to be further entangled, and this was the fundamental reason. Whether Xue Qing's sentiment at that time was relief or resentment, Chu Jing could not perceive nor fully comprehend. But he fully respected Xue Qing's decision. Fate is destined by heaven, affinity relies on human actions, this statement isn't wrong. But ultimately, due to various reasons, they arrived at this point today. Chu Jing walked slowly through the great universe, observing those with whom he once had some connection, resolving many causes and consequences, his mind becoming increasingly tranquil, like the deep sea after a storm, unfathomable. At last, he sat cross-legged amidst the starry sky, raising his hand to take out the still-warming 3 Lives book. Bai Nian's true spirit had not yet fully awakened, but his divine sense had been completely nourished, lively and vibrant, no longer like a candle in the wind. He slowly opened the 3 Lives book. The pages turned by themselves in the absence of wind, which bore no words but countless flowing lights and interwoven causal lines. Chu Jing's gaze delved into this vast sea of reincarnation information, seeking many soul imprints. With the support of complete heavenly fate, the process had no significant obstacles. Soon, a soul's light and shadow were clearly locked onto and reflected from within the book's pages. Where Song Lingshua's divine soul resided. She had not entered reincarnation, instead falling into a deep slumber in the soul. Origin pool of the vast universe, her state appearing somewhat unstable. She was originally formed from emotional ties and was not a complete divine soul. Now, facing reincarnation again, those traces would soon be completely worn away. Chu Jing slowly raised his hand, fingers slightly spread, probing into the void before him. His hand, ignoring the boundaries of time and space, pierced through many barriers, reaching into the vast universe to gently scoop. As if lifting a handful of clear water, his movement was gentle, fearful of disturbing that fragile soul light. The next moment, his hand slowly retracted, with the soul light within his palm rippling like a full moon on water. Within the light and shadow, Song Lingshua's familiar facial outline faintly appeared, her eyes tightly closed, as though sleeping in an eternal dream, her expression peaceful, with a hint of fragility. Chu Jing gazed at the soul light in his palm, a complex expression flashing in his eyes. He carefully secured it, placing it within the core of his divine soul. Afterward, Chu Jing's divine sense again delved into the Three Lives book, searching for the souls of Moonlight, Fu Quanliang, Gung Yiyang, and others, leaving behind traces of true spirit aura. Since he had now reclaimed heaven's mandate, in the future epochs, he saw no reason to let old friends suffer from calamities. Ensuring their lifetime peace was a simple task that wouldn't take much effort. After completing all this, Chu Jing slowly raised his head, his gaze like a sharp sword tearing through the void, focusing on the entrance of the reincarnation road. The little Taoist stood quietly before the reincarnation road, his brow furrowed as he met Chu Jing's gaze. At this moment, he no longer knew what Chu Jing intended to do. The river of spacetime in the future had not changed, remaining as it was before. This was sufficient proof that all Chu Jing did now did not alter the ancient history. He still became the heaven of the new epoch. But the response Chu Jing had given him before was completely different. As he pondered, Chu Jing had already stepped towards him. With a slight frown between his brows, Chu Jing directly asked, "Why does the sun-eroding cry still remember Xue Qing? Why hasn't he been affected by the river of spacetime?" This matter, the little Taoist should have an answer. The little Taoist was silent for a while, then began to speak slowly. It was merely an accident, because Yin Tianji used the power of the good corpse to interfere with time and space, causing an issue. Chu Jing's eyes slightly narrowed, and within an instant, he understood. Is it the heart-burning corridor? The heart-burning corridor connects with time and space, born of heaven's mandate. Yun Tianji originally intended to make the sun-eroding cry suffer the tortures of purgatory through this, but he did not anticipate that this would cause the sun-eroding cry's memory to penetrate time and space, allowing him to escape the influence of the river of spacetime. At this point, the little Taoist paused slightly, and his expression became slightly tense. "There is one more thing I hadn't anticipated. By some stroke of fate, the heart-burning corridor actually gave you countless opportunities to try and save Songling Xue. To avoid any accidents, I released you from the heart-burning corridor." The implication is clear. If Songling Xue were truly saved, Chu Jing might not have risked going to the ancient times, and many events would change once again. Chu Jing's expression paused, a trace of understanding flashing in his eyes. At the time when he walked out of the heart-burning corridor, it was without any warning, and he had doubts even then. As the good corpse of the immortal Tao heavenly fate true spirit, to achieve this was all too easy. What you need to do now is just the final step. The little Taoist took a deep breath and advised, by severing this strand of my divine sense, you can inherit the heavenly position, restart the yin-yang, and re-establish the heavenly order. He was urging Chu Jing to act and kill him, fearing any change. Chu Jing's gaze deepened slightly, and suddenly he asked, as long as there is one person who can inherit all the heavenly fate, they can inherit the heavenly position, and replace you, right? Do not make meaningless attempts. This person can only be you. The little Taoist's expression changed slightly. If you go astray, it would reverse the ancient history, and the river of spacetime would retaliate, leading to unpredictable horrors. Everything you desire will no longer exist, and in the end, everything will return to nothingness, starting over again. He heard the implication beyond Chu Jing's words. There was a thought of escape. The little Taoist took a deep breath, his expression becoming increasingly grave. The shackles of the river of spacetime are not so easily broken. All doubts have been resolved, and I will not stop here. The path I wish to walk from now on requires no guidance from you. The experiences of those before may not necessarily be useful. Chu Jing shook his head slightly, his expression gradually restoring to calmness, as he slowly raised his hand. You have already become part of the past, and future matters no longer involve you. I will innovate and create anew, not walking the path of past predecessors. In an instant after saying this, Chu Jing's palm gently pressed down, erasing the little Taoist's figure. The reincarnation road surged, and the last fragment of the heaven's mandate merged into Chu Jing's perception. Chu Jing's expression was calm, and he bowed with a salute. Please, heaven, take your time. As the little Taoist dispersed, the river of spacetime suddenly rose with waves, surging violently. Time accelerated madly within Chu Zhang's perception. The entire great universe began to wither at an accelerating pace, and all its essence was drawn towards his cave heaven world, continually nourishing the heavens through the Tao. Seed. His cave heaven world began to rapidly expand, and in the blink of an eye, it encompassed countless star domain territories. New heavenly Tao laws were being nurtured, shrouded in the chaos and ignorance. The yellow springs penetrated into his cave heaven world, where all reincarnating living creatures were transfigured sequentially. All realms shattered, and the entire great universe, including the vast universe, began to collapse. The mixed essence turned like an ocean, rushing towards Chu Zhang. Amidst this celestial calamity, Chu Zhang's gaze deepened for an instant, and his mind transformed into countless incarnations, merging into the ancestral Tao golden body pervading the universe. The originally shattered cracks were restored, broken stones recombined, reflecting the brilliance of gold and jade. The incense fire divine path burned once more, and one by one, the incense flame golden bodies emerged from the temple, stepping out of the deep mountains and great marshes, and fell within the broken star river. The multitude of incense fire willpower transformed into the heaven-reaching divine ship, constructing bridges leading to Chu Zhang's cave heaven. A great number of living creatures surged in, escaped calamity, avoiding disaster. The name of Taoist ancestor Zheng Chu burned brightly again, and the incense fire willpower prospered further. Chu Zheng looked at this scene before him, his expression growing increasingly cold. This world would be reborn through his body. His internal cave heaven not only devoured the great universe and the vast universe but also the vitality of his own flesh. The rapidly expanding cave heaven was an indescribably heavy burden. The entire weight of both realms almost simultaneously pressed onto his shoulders. In the blink of an eye, this immense celestial weight nailed him to the spot, rendering him immobile. The river of spacetime suddenly appeared beneath Chu Zhang's feet, splashing with waves, and time gradually rose, slowly covering Chu Zhang's instep. His figure was completely frozen at this moment, and within the river of spacetime, it was as if an invisible giant hand gripped him tightly. Yet, Chu Zhang's expression remained undisturbed, showing no trace of surprise. Just earlier, during the conversation with the little Taoist, a flash of spiritual light had infused into his mind, revealing a new path. Previously, the process by which the little Taoist became the heavens, although different from his, likely would not differ too much. It was merely obtaining the heavens mandate from the hand of the sky of the previous epoch, thus becoming the new sky. How similar this is to the succession of worldly imperial power. The heavens change, yet the river of spacetime remains eternal. Heaven's mandate is originally a part of the river of spacetime. It is not the power of heaven but rather of space and time. To break free from the shackles of spacetime, he must let go of everything, heavenly fate, heaven's mandate, everything must be relinquished. But just like that little Taoist said, he is the one chosen by the river of spacetime, and the moment he killed the little Taoist, he could no longer escape. However, compared to the little Taoist, he now has another choice. In just a brief moment, the waters of the river of spacetime have submerged Chu Zhang's calves. Chu Zhang's expression is calm, unhurried, as he begins to write a new heavenly order, new heaven and earth laws. He erased all traces of heavenly fate, all memories related to heavenly fate were buried into the past spacetime by him. At the same time, he retracted all heaven's mandate, using heaven as the guideline, grasping the pinnacle of the cultivation path with destiny as the lock in his hand. Without heaven's permission, no living creature can ascend to the ancestral realm. Only those chosen by heaven can dominate all beings, thus, the struggle for the Tao can be settled. Everything about the one chosen by heaven is held in heaven's palm. Even if chaos arises again, suppression is just a thought away. As for this chosen one, naturally, he is the one to choose. Chu Zhang took a deep breath, and as he looked up, his expression momentarily froze. In the river of spacetime, he saw the figure of Xueqing. He watched as Xueqing made her way towards him, battling the ancient ancestors along the way, ultimately perishing on the other shore of spacetime, her blood staining the years of time. This was indeed a verified occurrence in history. Chu Zhang's expression briefly paused, taking a deep breath, he lowered his head again, beginning to revise the laws. He further perfected the heavenly order. Heaven is supreme, the power over life and death should completely return to heaven. Heaven gives birth to all things, so it should naturally hold the great power over the life and death of all beings. He no longer allowed naturally born and nurtured living creatures to possess power surpassing heaven. Reflecting on the numerous great realms he had visited, Chu Zhang pondered for a moment, and once again modified the heaven and earth laws, allowing the heavenly Tao more autonomy. Ordinary great realms are too fragile compared to living creatures, unable to resist their own decline. With this law, the consciousness of the heavenly Tao will be more flexible, able to autonomously mobilize the spiritual energy between heaven and earth, without the need for a cultivator to steward it, while still being able to wield the thunderous might of heavenly punishment. After writing this law, Chu Zhang once again looked up, glancing at the past. He once again saw Xueqing, but this time, it was just a wisp of divine sense, crossing the ages, wanting to reach the future. Chu Zhang was silent for a moment, shouldering the weight of two realms, stepping aside to let Xueqing pass. Enduring the heavy pressure of the two realms caused Chu Zhang's body to sink further. In just a brief moment, the waters of the river of spacetime nearly reached his waist. He took a deep breath, unwavering, and continued to write the heavenly order. Recalling the Three Lives book, Chu Zhang pondered for a long time, ultimately leaving Banyan a way out. He granted those spiritual treasures the same limits as living creatures. Spiritual treasures, like demons, are allowed to transform and be born, to grow flesh and blood. Later, if Banyan regrets, he can still choose to transform and emerge, living another life as a living creature. The wisp of divine sense from Xueqing returning to the future soon returned. Chu Zhang once again stepped aside, and as his foot sank, the waters of the river of spacetime flooded past his waist and abdomen. Before he could take further action, Xueqing again returned from the past, surrounded by a bloody glow, like raging fire. Chu Zhang remained silent, knowing that this time, Xueqing had come to the future to seek help to save him. He stepped aside once more. In an instant, a blinding immortal light lifted Xueqing, soaring from the future, spanning across spacetime, and returned to the past. This was the aid Xueqing sought for him, a supreme immortal from the future. Chu Zhang's body remained still, silently waiting, watching as the river of spacetime's waters submerged his chest. Soon, that streak of blinding immortal light returned, the figure of Xueqing no longer in its grasp. That streak of immortal light halted in front of Chu Zhang. "How did you detach from this spacetime?" The soft whisper reached Chu Zhang's ears, quickly followed by another sentence. "Just now, that girl agreed to exchange the method of transcendence for my intervention." Chu Zhang remained silent for a moment, not speaking, and offered a wisp of divine sense, only 4 words. "Substitute one for another." The immortal light fell silent for a moment, drifting away, leaving only a whisper. "The path you've taken, I cannot take, I cannot bear to." Chu Zhang did not speak, allowing the waters of the river of spacetime to submerge his neck. The weight of the cave heaven world grew heavier, seemingly about to drag him into the abyss. Chu Zhang's expression remained calm, constantly perfecting the heavenly Tao laws, while connecting to the grotto heaven, borrowing incense fire willpower to allow Xingqiu to be reborn. To escape, he must leave everything behind, but he needs someone to inherit the heavenly fate for him. Xingqiu is undoubtedly the most suitable candidate. He cannot take anything belonging to the river of spacetime. Ultimately, what he can escape with is probably just a wisp of divine sense. But Chu Zhang is not content with just that, he wants to take Song Lingxue with him. Song Lingxue is not a complete divine soul, at its essence, it is merely a thread of emotion, and he believes he can accomplish it. But before that, he still needs someone who can stay here in his place, inherit the cause and effect of heavenly fate, and reopen heaven and earth. At this moment, Xingqiu must not only be Xingqiu, but also retain all the memories belonging to Chu Zhang. The waters of the river of spacetime continued to rise unhurriedly, submerging his chin, obscuring his mouth and nose, and finally slowly covering Chu Zhang's eyes. In that instant, all eons of time turned to dust, reflecting into Chu Zhang's perception. Between breaths, he gazed upon ancient history, his heart and mind experience dramatically soaring, yet he remained unwavering. As the waters of the river of spacetime submerged over his head, Chujing made no hesitation, abandoned heavenly fate, and let go of everything. Physical body, cultivation, heavenly fate, all became void. But he felt no pain, leaving only a thread of divine sense, carrying Song Lingshua's soul light, resembling a dragon carp leaping in the river, frantically fleeing towards the boundless void above the river of spacetime. In this instant, Jingchu, completely submerged by the waters of the river of spacetime, slowly opened his eyes. He slightly raised his head, watching the tender soul light above him as it drifted further away, the complexity in his eyes deepening. Soon, his expression returned to indifference, and he swallowed the waters of the river of spacetime, his form swelling, surpassing the law of heaven and earth, growing billions of times larger, stepping on time, severing the years of time. The majestic heavenly sound echoed through the spacetime, resonating above the eternal years. Heavenly, shall cast aside name and surname, buried in spacetime. Eternity begins and ends with me, I leave an initial character. Initial means origin. After me, only origin remains as heaven. Songs of Tao sound engraved in the origin of all paths. The great universe and universe collapsed in an instant. The essence gathered over billions of years within the great realm, the lingering echo that nurtured the peak Taoist orthodoxy, transformed into radiant rivers crossing the star domain, frantically converging upon Jingchu's cave heaven world. The barrier of the great realm crumbled inch by inch, turning into the purest heaven and earth primordial chi, merging into the light river, suspended upon the ancient continent of the universe's ruins. All its former mountains, spirit veins, rivers, lakes, and seas were drained of their last spirituality, merging into the river, boiling and surging, rushing towards the great realm. All the essence of the old universe, continuously flowing into Chujing's cave heaven world, then devoured, absorbed, and transformed. The Tao seed transformed into the placenta of a new epoch, frantically absorbing all nutrients from the old universe. Under such nourishment, the continent of the cave heaven world once again began to expand crazily. Rumbling, at the world's edge, the originally chaotic barrier was split open by the creation giant axe, making a great noise akin to the creation of heaven and earth. Chaos receded, purity and turbidity separated, the new continent transcended the speed of light billions of times, frantically evolving and expanding. The earth coagulated itself amidst the rumble of laws, the collision of plate tectonics, rising to form towering divine mountains rich with endless minerals and spirit veins, high enough to support the blue sky. In the depressions, vast oceans instantly formed, waves surged, each drop of seawater contained innate water essence and life origin. The sky stretched higher and deeper, the shadows of the sun, moon, and stars naturally formed in the firmament above, slowly rotating, scattering divine light that nourished all things. And this was just the beginning. The expansion speed not only did not slow down but became faster and faster, one new continent after another, under the will of Jingchu, rapidly unfolded like scrolls. Soon, the scale of this cave heaven world surpassed the peak of the former great universe period, and was still rapidly expanding towards infinite possibilities. In this almost mad expansion and reshaping, more fundamental changes were occurring in the depths of the world's origin. New heavenly Tao laws were being nurtured. The laws of the old epoch were completely shattered at this moment, transformed into nutrients for new life. The new heaven and earth laws, like a giant net covering the heavens and earth, were quietly constructed. At the beginning of the heaven and earth laws, where purity and turbidity were distinct and yin-yang initially determined. Bang, a magnificent explosion sounded, a vast, boundless river, radiating the breath of death and rebirth, manifested out of thin air, then pervaded the entire world. Yellow Springs. The truly complete realm of reincarnation, guided and manifested by Jingchu with supreme might, encompassed the whole heaven and earth. The waters of Yellow Springs flowed silently, carrying the power of reincarnation. On the river's surface, countless soul shadows could be vaguely seen wandering forward. Those were all the residual souls from the old universe waiting for rebirth, currently drawn by the power of Yellow Springs, entering this newborn heaven and earth. As yellow springs permeated, the complete 6 paths of reincarnation began operating autonomously within the framework of the new heavenly Tao. All reincarnating creatures, whether they were mythical immortal emperors or insignificant mortal beings like dust, now under this new reincarnation order, severed their past, cleansed their karma, then based on their personal causes and destinies, reincarnated successively within this vast boundless cave heaven world filled with infinite possibilities. Pure soul light beams ascended from the world-pervading yellow springs like dripping spring rain, casting towards the numerous newborn continents. Their reincarnation lands differed. The mountain sprite's first awakening spiritual wisdom, the divine bird chick soaring through the 9 heavens, the dragon offspring nurtured in the deep sea, the fierce beast descendants running across the wild earth, or newborn infants in thousands of human race tribes. The fire seed of life, in this instant, on this land nourished by all the essence of the old universe, was reignited anew. Within these creatures' consciousness, the name of origin heaven gradually spread. The new heaven was established. A completely new epoch owned by Xingqiu, opened by his own hands and thoroughly mastered, gloriously commenced within this boundless great realm. At this moment, he was the absolute ruler of this perfect divine kingdom. Xingqiu took a deep breath, gazed back at the river of spacetime, momentarily stunned. A divine sense rolled all the way from upstream the river, finally stopping at his feet. It's Song Lingxue. Xingqiu was silent for a moment, then slowly stepped aside, offering a strand of heavenly light to protect Song Lingxue as she journeyed to the future. He knew the purpose of Song Lingxue's journey. This time, upon going to the future, Song Lingxue would acquire the martial arts scripture, thus opening a new path of Tao. This was an inevitable part of the past. Soon, Song Lingxue returned with the martial arts scripture, back to the past. Xingqiu stood silently in place for a long time, as Song Lingxue's figure reappeared on the river of spacetime. Her cultivation had already reached 9th-order perfection, searching for the opportunity to break into the spacetime domain. Practicing the future technique, naturally, she could only attain the Tao in the future. This was unavoidable. As he watched Song Lingxue draw ever closer, Xingqiu took a deep breath, a hint of sorrow flashing in his eyes. This is the last meeting. Song Lingxue's true spirit had already been taken by Chu Jing. Whether in the past or the future, he lacked the chance to see Song Lingxue again. This was his last meeting with Song Lingxue. After a long time, Xingqiu finally calmed his emotions, slowly raised his hand, and pointed an arcane light directly at Song Lingxue's forehead. Before she could react, a Tao fruit had already appeared, suspended on the ancient road spanning spacetime. Crack, the shell of the Tao fruit shattered layer by layer, and a tender shoot emerged from within, then rapidly began to grow. In just a few breaths, a crystalline and transparent Tao flower was in full bloom. During this process, Xingqiu infused some memories from the past into the Tao flower, letting Song Lingxue learn part of the truth about herself. He was reluctant to do so, but he had no choice. The current outcome, relatively speaking, was already a better one compared to other possibilities. If any changes were made, all previous efforts might become futile. He slowly raised his hand, took Song Lingxue's Tao flower into his palm, and gently turned away, never looking back at the past. The cave heaven world continued to expand wildly, and his figure soon disintegrated with it, merging into the heavens and earth. Only a few particles of dust were swept away by the waves of spacetime, gradually disappearing without a trace. In the boundless void at the summit of the river of spacetime, Chu Jing cradled a soul light tightly as if frantically sprinting towards the boundless void. He had no particular goal, just an endless upward drive. Breaking away from the river of spacetime had become his sole thought. For this, he had almost abandoned everything: heaven's mandate, honor, the mantle of the Creator, and the supreme authority over reincarnation. All of these were as light as dust in his eyes at that moment. Suddenly, the surrounding void violently stirred. Countless fragments of the spacetime law surged forth, transforming into the sharpest blades, sweeping in from all directions. Numerous fate trajectories from different time nodes entangled over him, attempting to drag Chu Jing into various times and spaces, imprisoning him eternally. In his ears were mixed murmurs, prayers, and even curses from a billion living creatures. These sounds ceaselessly gathered, bombarding Chu Zhang's sea of consciousness with relentless demonic noise. Chu Zhang's divine soul endured unprecedented torment, yet he never harbored a single thought of giving up. Before starting this endeavor, he had never considered the consequences. Reason told him this could lead to self-destruction, that transcending spacetime could result in a backlash potent enough to annihilate any existence, leaving not even a trace of true spirit. But in his mind, there was not a shred of fear. Only by transcending spacetime could one break free from the true shackles, even if it meant irrevocable doom ahead or the annihilation of body and Tao. He was still determined to try. Just like he had told Songling Xue before. Even if one day calamity should befall, the two of them would die together, heading for the 9 Netherworld Yellow Springs, still able to be a pair of ghostly lovers. Chu Zhang pressed onward unceasingly, never pausing for a moment. His speed gradually slowed, and his soul felt repeatedly burned and torn apart by a fire of 1,000,000,000 degrees. He couldn't remember how long he had been drifting. Time had lost its significance, leaving only endless pain. He didn't know how long had passed, but just before his consciousness was about to be completely drowned by pain and nearly dispersed, he perceived an end. A thin membrane appeared at the edge of his awareness. It was not a barrier constructed from material energy but a pure boundary. It was shapeless and intangible, yet it truly existed. It seemed to be the source wall of the river of spacetime, an ultimate shackle above the heads of all beings. Crossing it might lead to the true realm of transcendence. But the dangerous aura emanating from this membrane was clearly warning Chu Zhang. Crossing beyond might lead to death. Chu Zhang only hesitated for an instant before moving forward again. He did not want to immerse himself under the shackles of the river of spacetime, nor did he wish to accept this predetermined fate trajectory. Heedless of the consequences, he charged headlong into that invisible membrane. In an instant, the chaotic time currents receded like ebbing tides, drifting away from his nearly collapsing sense. The anticipated pain did not come. His soul seemed to undergo sublimation, achieving a qualitative change. A dimensional leap occurred above Chu Zhang's divine soul. In just a moment, he leaped over the true barrier of the ancestral realm, stepping into a brand new realm. This breakthrough was far more genuine than when he became the master of heavenly fortune. After a long time, Chu Zhang finally calmed his emotions and opened his eyes. But what lay before him left him momentarily stunned. Countless rivers of spacetime were enveloped within circles of membranes, rushing in the vast void universe. The river of spacetime, it was still there, silently roaring, unchanged through eternity. The birth and destruction of innumerable universes, the rise and fall of flourishing civilizations, the joys and sorrows of countless living creatures, still floated within, playing out, transformed into one insignificant ripple after another, rising and then perishing once more. The end.